Yoshida.
This is Fern Halls.
And you are listening to Aetheryte Radio.
Aetheryte Radio.
Here we go.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Aetheryte Radio, Gamerscape's Final Fantasy XIV podcast. I'm FusionX. Joining me today, we've got Zanidra.
Hello.
We've got Aldino.
I didn't know who you were going to next, but it was me. Hello.
Literally the same order every
I don't know.
week.
It could change.
I mean, maybe you were gonna shake it up. This
I'm
is
gonna
Ready. Yeah, he could have been ready, and then you wouldn't have said Aldino.
No, I'm taking it back. Rook,
Okay.
we're going to you next. Welcome.
Hey,
Rook's here.
thank you.
And last but
Hi.
not least, we have Aldino.
All right.
You shouldn't have given me the time to get ready.
Great, and we're done. Great
And that's
podcast,
it. That's
everybody.
gonna do it for this episode. Shortest episode in history.
I don't know. I feel like we've had others where one of us had said something and Fusion's like, and we're out.
Oh no, several times. There have been episodes where I get into a mood because of the level of tomfoolery that that occurs.
You love
Yeah,
it.
well, we're not sorry.
What would this show be without the tomfoolery? Boring.
Tomfoolery. Yeah, exactly. Tomfoolery is
Organized and on topic.
That does not sound like a fun thing to listen to. Mm-mm.
Also,
NPR activate. All right, so we got a few bits of news. Make It Rain is coming back, returning on June 3rd, and it'll go until June 20th. So if you like your MGP, this is a good time to get MGP. Also, if you like taking Mimi screenshots, this is a good time to get some emotes for Mimi screenshots. They're going to have show left and show right emotes as I like smack stuff around.
I love these. I've already seen people like emulating or talking about emulating the meme where it's like, look at my wife, or like, look at my husband. And I'm ready for this.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I can't wait to see what people end up doing with that.
I need them to come up with some new prizes because I always scroll to the bottom and I'm like, what the prizes is? And I'm like, I have all of these. I will be lazy for this contest.
Right.
Well, that's when you can make your own thing, right? You can take the meme and just be like, look at this thing. And then it'll be like a motorcycle made of clocks that you glitch together.
Sure,
and that's your prize.
We did have them add some new rewards to Manderville, as well as ungender locking some of the gear that was already in there. So it's a good time to earn that bonus gil, get some of the new mounts, get some of the new stuff, pick up old things if you didn't get them, in addition to the new emotes, which are very good.
Yeah. Also, they did some. We're gonna for those listening to the audio portion, the most gigantic like air quote fingers here. They made balancing adjustments to PvP, and then immediately went, yeah, that was our bad. We maybe overcompensated a little bit. Apparently,
The data.
the data. Yeah, Black Mage is good in PvP right now.
It was before.
Yeah, but now it's like good though.
Yeah.
It's
Like
really
ridiculous.
But like
powerful.
for real. So
You just
basically,
have to not get murder first. Like every job.
I feel bad, man. The amount of books that Yoshida has had to write lately, for housing, for PvP balance things. It's like, oh my gosh. So essentially what happened is they made what they felt like were going to be balance changes to Black Mage and PvP. But what ended up happening is they went a little too far with it, and now Black Mage is very good. And so there's this long post on the Lodestone now talking about how they do the balance changes, the fact that everything from the changes with this patch actually were done like at the beginning of the month, and what their kind of schedule is for stuff. And by the time that he looked at it, it was like, oh, well, maybe that really wasn't what we needed to do, but it was already kind of in the pipeline, so to speak. So they will be making some more adjustments to that. And he talked a little bit about some of the frontline adjustments that are coming as well. So for people that are into PvP and actually into frontline PvP, there's some good news for you. For the Crystalline Conflict people, if you see a black mage, just run. Just run. Don't go anywhere near him. But yeah, they'll get all that sorted out here soon.
Yeah, it's good to hear that they're going to balance frontline, because a lot of people were like, why would they? Like, it's not the mode. Who cares?
What's frontline?
Right.
That's
But I'm glad
Can
that
you
they're talking about
do
it.
in the roulette?
This game has
For extra
PvP.
points.
So if you
Old
want to get your
PvP?
frontline win, just play Summoner right now before they nerf it to the ground, because it will be. That's the only complaint. I don't even play frontline, but that's everything you hear. All the memes are Summoners will blow you up.
I
You
did
know what's
something
coming.
the other day. I
Yeah.
got hit by 3 white mage limit breaks in a row, and I didn't die.
Oh, are you
How
God?
did that happen? I guess so. I don't know, man. I was also a white mage, so that might have been.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It's the
Mhm.
only way to fight.
Yeah.
Is to be one, yeah.
Yep. I'm so glad to hear this. It was also interesting reading this. So if anybody hasn't read this post, you can find, more information from Yoshida-san if you look it up, or, it's pretty accessible if you just type in PvP update or things like that. And I liked actually hearing him talk about how they have been addressing balancing or thinking about PvP, because he goes into a little bit more detail about, even like how they implement, so that, a lot of the changes that they're making are like a month almost ahead of whenever the actual implementation goes live, and how, as they were trying to respond more fluidly to on-the-fly PvP changes, they pushed through this Black Mage change. And, he's kind of he spent a little more time going into depth about it, and what they are learning from the, I think, huge rush in popularity of PvP in 14, which is a very different kind of pressure for the game versus where it has been in the past, and how they are trying to figure out like what works best on the fly patches, or really taking more time to figure things out, how they test. He himself was in game playing PvP on the Japanese data centers, and even a ton of people, I know Brian Ricardo, and a bunch of people that love PvP were over playing matches with him while they were sort of testing some of this stuff. So it's really interesting to just see how they are responding to this, and I think it's really heartening for those of you that have been loving Final Fantasy's new PvP and the rework, but might find that stuff like Frontlines, or, concerns about balance, or concerns about longevity of the game mode and the health of competitive and all this stuff, right? They are really actively trying to find a good new way to robustly update and patch. So don't lose hope, and it's an interesting read if you're curious about how they've been kind of working through it.
Yeah,
I did definitely, when I read the update, the little patch update thingy, I was like, oh, dancer changes, sweet. Potency is 5,000. Oh, PvP, got it right. Because there's like never individual patches just for PvP. So
Yeah.
I think that's an indicator in and of itself.
Yeah. So, changes will be coming. Black Mage will be adjusted, and frontline stuff will get reworked a little bit. So, please look forward to it. And that's it for news. We did it. That's it. That's gonna be the show.
Yep.
Well, no, I'm kidding. We got a lot to talk about. So this episode, this week, we're gonna talk about
Ourselves.
Yeah, we're just gonna talk about ourselves. We've had a week. We just really need to boost our egos, and so this is a topic Rook came up with. So Rook, what are we talking about today?
The last 10 plus years of Final Fantasy 14. So it'll be a quick talk. I'm thinking 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, easy.
10 for
Yeah.
10.
A year a minute. Let's go.
But particularly, I guess, from our perspective, but also all of your perspectives, what it has been like playing this game, whether you have been here since the get-go from 1.0 on, or you came in different sort of eras. We have a bunch of questions and kind of thoughts today as we revisit each of the different eras of the game. But I think we'd all love to hear your answers too, whether you're live in chat or on YouTube, to any of these eras, what you remember from different times in the game. We just hit 20 years of Final Fantasy XI. Obviously, Endwalker was a celebration as well of 10-year culmination of story arc, 10 plus if you include 1.0. So it seemed like a good chance to kind of reflect and look back on the game so far.
I remember when I jumped from 11 to 14, I thought, oh my God, I spent so much time in 11. I probably won't spend half that much time in 14.
Am I really doing this again? Am I really starting another one of these?
Now I've spent more time in 14 than I ever did in 11. And having left 11, my experience there was okay at times, but I'm not in a rush to ever go back. Whereas right now, I'm still quite satisfied with my 14 experience. So something's going right over here.
So we're gonna go all the way back. When did everybody start playing?
Alpha.
Yeah.
I think beta. I don't think I got into the
Beta. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how.
1.0 alpha beta.
Yeah,
back in my day, character creation was done on a little hill in Lenosia.
Back in my day, although it was the Rapture, like I remember there was a graphic bug where everything was just super bright for some reason on a bunch of machines.
See, I remember the battle log bug where you would see the battle stats for literally everyone in your log. This is like alpha day one stuff. Like
Actually amazing considering all of the debates about parsing right now and stuff. Can you imagine you just come into the game, everybody's numerical data is just up there in the log, everyone can see it.
Yeah, I was really hesitant. Like I did not have a great time in 11, and it was mostly people, but a lot systems as well. So I was like, yeah, I'll play the alpha. And I remember getting crap about it from some people that I knew that played MMO. I was like, no, don't do that. You know what happened the first time. So yeah, I was like, I'll give it a try. And I mean, we could talk about that when we go through it. Rook, when did you start?
I started later than all of you. So I came into the game Heavensward. Heavensward, after it was out, we were, I think, in like the first patch cycle, like the very first patch release for Heavensward. And I got into the game then. So I missed all the beta. I missed 1.0. I missed the launch of 2.0 and then came in Heavensward, which actually I think was a huge sort of growing moment for the game as well. There were so many things that changed even in that brief window. So even though I didn't feel like I've been there from the very, very, very beginning, so many things that were almost residual leftovers from 1.0 and the 2.0 relaunch were during that window of Heavensward, changed, addressed, morphed, and I was kind of on the threshold of the change, I think, the big changeover into maybe more of our current day mentality and structures and class structures in game. So that's when I came in.
Rook had no interest in 14, and then they're like, Dragon expansion. She's like, you don't say!
No, I was so interested in 14. I've mentioned before, but I actually owned 11. I had 11. I've had a copy of it for almost since it came out. It was one of the oldest, it was the only Steam game that I had in my library for years and years. I literally, in order to do the 11 stream that we did last night with Fusion, I literally had to buy a newer version of the game because the ancient, old, crusty version that I had of the game, I don't know if it's not supported anymore or if it was just like an upgrade because they put through all new stuff and retail's different now. But I had to upgrade it, but I could never play it. I never had a PC that would run an MMO until post-college, actually, which was buck wild to me. So I almost exclusively console gamed. I did a lot of single players because we just never had a PC growing up that could support it. My mom would never pay for a monthly subscription. So it was one of those things where I waited and finally, I had my first ever PC and I immediately got Final Fantasy XIV.
Man.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
that was.
so
Go ahead.
normally when people are like, "Oh, yeah, it didn't start till well Reborn or Heavensward," I'm like, "Yeah, that was probably best for you." For you though, 1.0 would probably have been fun because the only thing to do in 1.0 was RP. RP was the point of 1.0 after a point. when all of the hardcore players were like, "Oh, this bad, I go, bye-bye." The RPers stayed around and
Yep.
the community was so tight-knit. Everybody knew everybody else, and it was actually really easy to weed out crazy people. Every now and then you get one of those RPers who's like too something, little too
Yeah.
far, a little just rude, a little stalkery.
Oh no.
Well, we didn't have any of those because everybody knew everybody else, and everybody went, don't interact with that guy. In a
So
good way. In a good
it
way.
was would you say that in 1.0 it was more of a tight-knit kind of community? Like, did it feel
Absolutely.
as though
Oh yeah.
Do you think that was because so few people were playing the game and so many people
Uh-huh.
stopped playing? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were. I mean, obviously, right when it first started, there were more people, but as the realization came out that maybe this game wasn't great, a lot of people jumped ship really quick, and I mean, you could see that not just in player population, but just in the amount of content creation for the game. Like there were so
Yeah.
many podcasts that started and 2 months later they were gone.
Yep.
The only podcast that lasted on Gamerscape, as a matter of fact, was the RP podcast that I was helping run.
That's true.
We had stuff to talk about because that's all that was happening.
Oh my god, we had such a grand vision.
So now
We're gonna have this
okay.
whole network of shows. It's gonna be great. And then 1.0 was like, "Hi guys, I'm 1.0," and we're just like, "Shit."
So I know, okay, Fusion and Zen, you both were from 11. So it was a no-brainer for you. Like, I'm guessing 14 was going to be released and you were both like, we will be playing that. Was that kind of what led you into playing 14 from beta on? Or was it...
I had some friends.
Okay.
Who, like, I didn't even know about it. At that time, I was like, God, just like face buried in college, not paying attention to the internet, and also playing 11 for some reason. So I had some friends who were like, "Hey, this new one's coming out. We should give it a try." And I was like, "You know what? Okay, I guess I can do that." Which is actually probably why I didn't get into alpha, because I was not paying attention. But then I got into the beta, and I don't hang out with any of those friends anymore.
Me,
They were
me on
friends.
the other hand, I was paying a lot of attention. I mean, Project Rapture, the new MMO from Square Enix, as soon as that trailer dropped, E3 2009 Sony conference, I was like, all right, this is it. We talked to people that were running the 11 wiki. We're like, we should do 14 stuff together. And that was it. That was it. So yeah, I was very on top of this stuff. I mean, we had heard about this for years and years, going back when they announced Shadowbringers and they showed us the Crystarium for the first time. They're like, yeah, does it look familiar? I'm like, yes, it does. I know exactly what this is from because I was so on top of all of this stuff back then. So yeah, for me, I mean, it was a natural kind of progression. Okay, I've been playing 11 for, at that point, really only maybe like 5 years. 4 years. Like, I mean, when you
Did I play 11 longer than you?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I
did.
would
Oh
have
my God.
started. I would have started 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow,
just a
Zanidra.
smidge.
The veteran here.
I
Oh
was.
my gosh, I remember when you sign in, when you sign up for Play Online, you have to be 18. So you have to get a parent or guardian. And I
No,
was
I thought it was 13. 13 is the TOS age.
let me finish my story because I
Okay.
will let you know.
Okay.
You had to be 18 because I was 17 and I couldn't sign up. They were like, "You're not old enough." So I lied about how old I was. I just changed.
Zanidra.
Yep, I changed the last the number of my birth year, And years later, when I was, I think, doing something for 14, because all of that stuff like merged into the same accounts, they were like, ma'am, your birth year is wrong. Are you sure this is your account? And I was like, what do you mean? Oh yeah, I lied to you many years ago.
I must
But
have.
the person was, yeah, the person was really nice and was like, I was like, oh no, that is my birthday, but it's the wrong year by one. I must have hit the wrong button. And they're like, yeah, okay, sure.
Oh my gosh. Now, Aldino, you dabbled in 11, right? Am I remembering it correct? Did you play it all? Did you?
played
Or
Yeah,
did you
I
come?
played a lot.
Yeah.
For a while, like towards the end of vanilla. I'm just gonna call it vanilla. No one calls it vanilla. Into Ottergon.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
didn't realize
that
you
was
had
the time.
played so much for some
Yeah.
reason. I guess
Yeah,
just
I played
because
with Zen.
Zen and Fusion are louder about 11.
See, I did not have a great time. And not even a little bit.
I'm over
Like,
here like 11 literally changed my life, and Aldino's like, yeah, I played it. It was all right.
I like that's the thing. I was just trying to play every MMO in the world at the time. I love MMOs. I was like, 11's an MMO. I'll play that. I was playing Eve and WoW and Warhammer and God, I don't even know.
Did you
So
ever
many
did you ever get
that
around
time.
to trying out Hello Kitty online?
No, but I wanted to. There was some reason that I didn't, and I can't remember. I think I just got sucked into 11, and I stopped playing other MMOs at the time.
Mm.
But yeah, I played 11. Had to be for about a year and a half, maybe, with
Okay.
Zen on the same server in the same friend groups, which is why, yeah, I also did not have a great time.
So then, what made you go, I had a bad time in 11. I guess I'll play Final Fantasy 14.
It's an MMO.
Okay.
I try and get in every single beta that I can, like still to this day, of every MMO.
Mhm.
I don't care what it is, just to try it because I like the genre. So yeah, I was like, I'll try it. Why not? I like Final Fantasy. 11 was maybe 14 will be better for me. So that's why I tried it.
I loved in chat, Monty said, I remember trying to join sites and sign up for keys in languages I didn't understand.
That's right.
There, oh
Big
my
nerd.
gosh, the drama around getting a 14 like alpha or beta key. Holy cow. And then so this, I mean, this is also, I think, a really important perspective to have on this too, is streaming was in its infancy. Like YouTube was picking up. Streaming was kind of a newer part of
Oh
that.
my
I mean,
God.
we used to have, like, it would be a big deal when we would do an episode of our 11 podcast live, like on like I think we would like shoutcast it on like just like audio only type stuff. Like I think then we used was it Justin TV? But even then, like we didn't have video. It was just an image.
I remember when Aetheryte Radio was still just audio, and we got to the point where Fusion's like, everybody needs to get a camera.
Everybody's doing
We're-
video now. It's the new
We're
thing.
going on cams, and I was so resistant. I was like, I don't want my face on the internet. I don't want to have to wake up and put makeup on.
I mean, that is a huge mood. Though.
That's fair.
Like, let's be real. There are many days where I too sit here 30 minutes before when everything's going to go live, just staring at the webcam, like, why must I put makeup upon mine face? Like, why is this a curse?
Mhm.
I was
That's
so
amazing.
resistant. I gave up, clearly. it was the right thing to do. This is the norm now. But once upon a time, it was not.
Yeah.
And also, once upon a time, dial-up went
Back in my day, dial up. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I played 11 on dial-up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think I had cable by then. The thing I remember
For a time.
the thing
And then-
I remember, yeah, my for lack of a better term, my gateway drug to Final Fantasy 11 was Phantasy Star Online for the Dreamcast.
Yep. That
The
was my
amount
first MMO.
of dial-up ISP providers that I would constantly swap between to try and find a good one that worked for the dial-up modem on the Dreamcast. I did like Net Zero, I did Earthlink, like it was insane.
Mhm.
Jome in chat reminded me. So Charles and I and a couple more of our friends used to visit Jome every weekend, and they would play D&D. And me and this other girl who didn't want to play D&D would go eat cheese and wine. But
Okay.
When you were in high school?
No,
No.
this is
college.
after.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, all right.
I was
like,
still playing
classy.
11 though. So I had this TV that was about like this big, and I played on PlayStation. And I would bring this tiny TV and a PlayStation to Jome's house every weekend so that I could wake up, because we would go up Saturday and stay over the night, hang out. I would wake up the next morning and run Dynamis from his house every weekend for
great.
so many years,
Yeah.
at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Incredible. So then, did you start out playing other Final Fantasy games, and then that got you into it, or was it strictly like Aldi? You mentioned 11 was an MMO, 14 was an MMO. I was going to play it. Does everybody have a history with Final Fantasy as a franchise, or
Every
did it start?
single one of them.
Wow.
I loved Final Fantasy before MMOs, right? Like, the second game I ever bought was 3-6 on Super Nintendo. First game was Mega Man X. But, like, yeah, I love Final Fantasy. I'm repping 8 right now. But, yeah, so I was like, that's why I tried 11. You know, it was an MMO and it was Final Fantasy, and there's a job system. Oh, yeah, I got to do that.
Yeah, so my
Mhm.
first exposure would so many people are gonna both love and hate this. My first exposure to the series entirely, I had a friend that when I went over, occasionally her sister would be playing Mystic Quest.
I knew it.
I didn't know anything about it. It was just something they played a lot. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then my friend got 7. And I remember playing a lot of 7 when I would go over to, for sleepovers and stuff that you would do when you were young, right? And he'd just play a lot of 7. And then I remember when 8 came out, I didn't have a PlayStation. So I went to my local video rental store and I rented a PlayStation to play FF8. And then I don't think I again didn't have a PlayStation for a while, so I played through 8. I played a good chunk of 9. Never finished 9, and then PlayStation 2 had come out, and I was like super into tech back then. Like, I couldn't go like a year without like doing a sleepover at a friend's house at least like 4 times that year, where we would like mod our PCs or like go to the local PC store and like buy LED fans and like try and like pimp out our PC cases. It was a thing back then.
Yeah.
And then I had seen that, hey, there's a hard drive coming out for the PS2. I'm like, that's cool. What can it do? It comes with Final Fantasy. And I'm like, that's neat. Like, I've played a lot of PSO. Like, I'll try that. And the rest, as they say, is history, I guess. Yeah, that was it. that was the beginning of the end for me.
I think my family didn't get a console until Nintendo 64. But we were always PC gamers. Like, I remember being very, very small and playing DOS games and like watching my dad play like flight simulators and Might and Magic and shit.
Look, if you don't know how to launch a game from DOS, you're not a real PC gamer.
Just saying.
Wow.
Just saying. I was 3 and I could do it. What are you doing?
Yep. Right.
Brain. So I didn't really have a lot of exposure to Final Fantasy early on, except through ROMs. So I think my first ones were 4 and Mystic Quest. So that I think I'm gonna say 4, just because it's less embarrassing, was my first Final Fantasy, and then after that was probably 10, and around that time, I had friends who also were nerdy video game people, and they were like, all right, so you need to play 8, like right now. Yesterday, 3 months ago, 2 years ago, play 8, go.
Yep.
So I did. And I did that reaction that so many people whose first Final Fantasy is 10 do. Oh, this doesn't look as good, does it?
Yeah.
But I quickly learned amongst my friend group that being judgmental of graphics was no, don't do that.
Don't be one of those people.
Yeah, don't be one of those people. So no, I did 8, and then I did 9. Didn't finish 9, but I got, I think, 2 discs through. All right. Is that a multi-disc one? Yeah, that's a multi-disc one.
Yep.
And then And then I went back to 7, and I actually don't care for 7. Yeah.
Wow,
The internet,
hot
So it
hates me
controversial
now.
take.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I'm not like, oh, 7's the worst, because it's not.
Mhm.
But I don't really care for 7.
Yeah, I didn't finish 7 until years after I'd gotten my PlayStation and done 8. I mean, I had
Mhm.
my PlayStation, God rest its soul. It was rough. The motor was dying on the CD drive, so whenever I wanted to play a game, I would put the disc on, spin the disc
Yep.
preemptively, and then quickly close the lid. I remember the day I got my PS2. So I got the PS2. It was a birthday present. So I got the PS2. I got the modem and stuff because my dad too is very techie, like, right? And so he's like, oh, that is pretty neat. Like, let's do it. So we got that. But I needed more games. So I remember we went to like, what was it then? Was it a Babbage's or a Funko Land? And I picked up like what was probably like one of the worst Harvest Moon games I've ever played for PS2. But then I went further down the road, and my friend that played 7, he's like, I'll sell you 10 and the guide for like $20. I was like, sold. So then I started playing 10 heavily. But yeah, I traded in that PlayStation to that store that day, and it worked that day when they tested it. So got him.
Sucks for the next person that bought it, though. I have a lot of good memories associated with 10, like family memories, because my dad decided to play it also, so we were kind of like in a race to see who could get to the end first. I got all the way to the middle, like the Riku fight, without realizing how the sphere grid worked. So I did not level up my characters at all until then, and somehow still won the race. There was also a point, I do not remember to this day what I did, but I got grounded. So I was only allowed to play for an hour, and I was like, Dad, you're just doing this because you want to try and win. And he's like, no, it's because you're a bad kid. Stop giving me mouth. And then there was a point where I don't know exactly where I was, but I guess he took pity on me because I'd reached the end of my hour, and I was like in the middle of something, and he was like, you can play till you die. That's fine. And I beat the game that night.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Incredible.
I didn't even have a memory card when I got 10. I got a PS2, but not a memory card.
Dangerous.
I had that problem. It was actually, there was a shortage when I got my Dreamcast. The amount of times I played the first 3 levels of Sonic Adventure, oh my god.
I was so mad because I had played through 10. Man, to the Seymour fight on the mountain. And there was a hurricane, and my power went out.
Was that like the hurricane? That
it was the hurricane in high school. Yep.
Oh man.
And I remember telling a friend, and his response to me was to just start laughing. I remember hitting him. Like, I don't even remember with what.
Bad.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I remember being like, "Did you just laugh?
Did you laugh at my ultimate suffering?"
Do you understand how bad this is? How many hours I've lost?"
I
man.
think, and this is gonna
this
is gonna sound weird, so let me finish after the initial laughter. I think I beat FF10 in the back of a van. Rook is
like an
immediate
After story.
Yes,
Look, some people go out with their dates and do things. Some people beat Final Fantasy X. No, we had a minivan. And when we would go to visit the grandparents, right, across the US, we would take a small TV, throw it in the seat. You know, we had like the 5 seats, right? So we had like the 3 seats and then the 2 in the back. So me and my brother would sit on the back 2 seats. We'd strap a small TV VCR combo to that middle seat, and we had a power inverter, and we would play 64 and PS2. I beat FF10 in my driveway when we had just gotten home from visiting my grandmother.
Incredible.
Now, is it because you couldn't leave the car until you were done? Everybody else was out of the car and you were still in there? Because that's what I see in my mind's eye.
The timing was very close.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I can't stop now. It was like this literally is the last fight as we pulled into the driveway.
It's so funny that all
Yeah.
of us played Final Fantasy because I also grew up on the Final Fantasy games. And I know so many people who it's the reverse where they got into 14 and they had never played a Final Fantasy game. And either that ended up kind of leading them in, or it was something where they still to this day have not played a single Final Fantasy except for 14. But I also grew up on 14, and it's funny because Zen, what you were saying about your family resonates so much because some of my best memories of my childhood come from gaming with my dad. And it was something where I think that experience just like so formulated even why later on I'd go on to want to do stuff like Twitch or do podcasts, right? The idea of sharing the joy of games, of sharing those memories, those moments that somehow take just like a game experience and make it something even more with other people where it is tied to all these other things in your life or these moments that you shared with others. And so my dad got 7. I don't remember much about it, but he loved fantasy worlds. Oh my gosh, he loved like Baldur's Gate. He loved all of those kinds of games. He loved CRPGs. And he was always looking for interesting stuff. So when JRPGs really started coming over, you know, he was so into them. And I remember him getting 7. I don't remember anything about the game at all. But the one that I do remember was 8 after it. And 8 was like, I was old enough, I think, to actually know what was happening or care about what was happening. I could understand and follow the characters. And I was hooked. I was hooked on this game. I was obsessed with it. I would spend like every week just waiting until it was time to go visit my dad at his apartment, and we'd play all day. I'd like go to sleep late. I felt like such a rebel. I'd fall asleep in front of the game, like wrapped up in blankets asleep. Because, you know, my dad was, you know, it was always a really fun time when we were there. He didn't have to be much of a disciplinarian or anything. So like we just gamed all weekend. And I was like, I remember that moment when I realized that games could be an experience. Like they could be a story. They could be something that was so captivating to me that it changed me in some way. I was also convinced for a very long time that Ifrit from 8 was actually my best friend, and I'm pretty sure I talked to him like he was an imaginary friend that I had.
Why didn't you
was in
become a
love with him.
summoner? Just out of curiosity.
I actually did in 14. I started as a summoner,
That's
and
so
then I
cute.
hated it. I
Oh.
hated it because it didn't play like
That's
a
less
summoner would
cute.
play.
Yep.
So
Way
I
less
ended up
cute.
switching to White Mage because of Yuna. Because I went on and I played 10 and other stuff, you know. But yeah, 8 is one that to this day I still love so much and will defend for all of its weirdness and its bizarre quirks, and because it just
Yuna is
made
also
me.
a summoner.
Yeah, but
Well, I know, but she does the White Mage staff dance
Yeah.
and she uses
Teasing
white
you.
magic as well.
Yeah.
And then
So
she
when I
gets
realized
shooty bangs in FF10 too, and is
Yeah.
a J-pop star.
becomes a machinist. Yeah.
you know, live your dreams, do whatever you
Yeah.
want, girl. But yeah, so I always had an eye on the Final Fantasy MMOs because of that. But like I said, I could never play them until much later, because the idea of being able to be my own character in that world was something I'd literally spent my entire childhood dreaming about. So
It's interesting because I kind of started getting into games too because of my dad, and it's really weird like now thinking he used to play games because he doesn't seem the type at all now.
Right.
But I mean I can remember him coming home from work. Hey, I just got this new game copied from my coworker. We scanned the instruction book so that you can enter the password on page whatever and whatever when you go to start it up. Because that's how they did piracy back in the day. You had to have the instruction booklet and be like, all right, enter the symbols on pages 5, 7, and 23. And that
Some of them got cute and asked you a question, and the answer was in there. Like it would be spelled out.
Yeah, so we had,
man.
I mean, we had booklets for I think like X-Wing, and yeah, all this stuff. So it was definitely like early NES stuff. We would occasionally bring in, like we would swap games with coworkers, right? He'd come home. I got Ghostbusters. Cool. Like, you know.
Do you remember they used to have stores that you just rented games in?
Yeah.
And it was like just PC games.
That I don't remember. I don't know if we had any
Yeah.
of those or not.
Yeah. It was, you know, it's like area. It depends on the area
Sure,
at that
sure.
point. But I do remember
It's
a
not
few
like
of those
a
places.
it wasn't like a chain thing. It was like somebody just decided that it would
Yeah.
be
This is a
That's
thing
fine.
I'm going to
financially
do.
sound to rent out their video games.
It'll be great
Video game
for a
library.
year until they do online authentication with serial codes. But until
Yep.
then, great
Works
business
good.
venture.
So I guess, I mean, I think that probably gives us the foundations of what led us into Final Fantasy XIV. But
We
do
like
we
video games.
we like video games?
They
But do
are.
we want to talk about 1.0? Do we want to transition into?
I mean, I think we have to.
Sure, yeah. Let's
Yes,
do
we
it.
do.
All right. All
Boy,
right, all right.
that was a game.
I like the look on your face is like, all right, are you serious? Or like, can we do this?
We're really gonna talk about
Look,
the
we had to
1.0?
talk about 1.0 if we were going to talk
Yes.
about 10 plus years
Yes.
of Final Fantasy 14. It is part of that. It is
Yeah.
part of that fusion.
And it was one of the best reviewed Final Fantasy games ever.
I actually, so we picked out a few little review snippets, both Gamer Escapes and some of the review snippets of other news outlets that have covered it. And it is actually hilarious to me reading. I was going through and just reading the 1.0 reviews.
Oh, they're
and it's
so
like,
bad.
They're so bad. Even from outlets where, like, usually they very favorably review things, it's like everybody had pretty much only bad things to say.
Because there were pretty much only bad things going on.
Yeah.
Let me see here. We have GameSpot. When the simple act of creating an account for the MMO game you just bought is a convoluted mess, you know you're in trouble.
It's still like that.
Yeah.
It's this person never used Play Online. You can tell. You can tell. It's unfortunate that the first impression you have of Final Fantasy XIV is so indicative of the experience at large. It's hard to miss these gaffes, the bizarre and unfriendly method of getting an account set up, the troublesome patcher, having to exit the game if you want to adjust the graphic settings, and so on. These might have been forgivable flaws had developer Square Enix provided an excellent reason to overcome these obstacles, but in fact, they set the stage for a misguided effort that uses its atrocious interface and torturous mechanisms to veil its core simplicity and unending repetition. So he didn't like it then?
Yeah,
I
I
feel
remember
like
having a slightly easier time being able to sign up and everything because I did have that 11 account.
Yep.
So I could just log into that and be like, checkbox, yes, do this. Krista was stupid. I don't.
I remember when they introduced Krista. I'm that old.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what Krista is?
I know. Okay, so Krista now in 14 exists as like an alternative cash payment. Like you can pay to get Krista and then use that essentially as cash on your account.
Had to use Krista. You had to buy Krista. Yes.
They
had to buy the Krista and turn around and use it.
They had this
to do it.
huge. I'm really curious. Like I would have loved to have been like the fly on the wall, right, at Square Enix when they came up with Krista, because when they launched it, they presented it as like, yeah, it's gonna be like this new. It was like. Maybe this isn't the best example. It was like the cryptocurrency of like 2009 or whenever it came out. They're like, yeah, it's gonna be great. You can use this to like sub to the games and to buy other stuff like CDs and things, and it's gonna be awesome. And it was like it was
money.
Yeah, it was really weird. And then they used earlier on there was a payment, like a third party payment company or something that they used.
Yeah.
But that was also like really notorious for just like randomly charging you like pennies at a time to like just it was really weird and shady. Yeah, that was the thing. But yeah, for a while, I mean, right now we have the MOG station. But that didn't exist. What we have now is like a completely new thing. I mean, back in the day we had the account management stuff that was in charge of 11 and they just used the same stuff for 14, but now it's kind of different where 11 still uses the old stuff because they don't want to put any time into reworking it. But I saw that look, Rook. She's like, yeah, I did that.
Well, because I just recently went through the process of almost reverse engineering what all of you did coming into 1.0, right? So your 11 account would just kind of sink into 14, and then it sounds like it was easier, right? So I did the reverse where I've been with 14, and I just set up an 11 account. And literally, if I had not had somebody here beside me being like, and then you go in here and you're going to click on this and you're going to add a service account, but then you're going to have to do this and then you're going to have to do that and then you're going to have to put this on for a subscription and then this over. It was the most confusing thing.
Yeah.
Gosh.
It wasn't easy. but yeah, and then eventually for 14 they made the Mog Station, where they're like, okay, we should make this a little better. But yeah, I mean, looking at the account stuff, there was actually, I don't know if you know this or not, Rook, in the great state of Illinois, they helped pass a law about making it easy to quit like online services and subscriptions because some governor's son couldn't find out how to unsub to 11.
That's
a real
amazing.
thing. He couldn't figure out and play online how to like cancel the account and stuff. So
Are you kidding
it went into
me?
yeah, that's a real thing.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, yeah, it sounds like 1.0, and we'll get into this as we touch base on the 1.0 recap here. It really does sound like, I mean, I thought that GameSpot review just so articulately and concisely in that one paragraph kind of encapsulated a lot of this. But even to this day in 14, the fact that Krista is still there, the fact that there are these kind of strange little like quirks about the Mog Station and how they separate out various things with signing up and making an account and getting this thing, and it's all these things go back to the history of this game. I mean, 10 plus years, right? It's amazing to me that we see the ghosts of a lot of this era even now to this day in 14.
To just complain about Kristen just a little more. Initially, when they were like, yeah, we'll let you use like credit cards now, I guess. They were like, but we're not refunding your Krista. Yeah.
Early,
so I think eventually they let you like bottom it out and then do a pay cycle like partially or something like that. But initially they were like, if you have, like 4 Krista left, sucks.
there was, yeah, I mean, for a long time, once Krista kind of came out in the early years of 14, the payment was just a pain in the ass. Like it really was. I can remember like when they're like, yeah, now you can use PayPal, and everyone was like, thank God, because like this whole thing, it's been a mess.
I wonder if that's why they gravitated towards setting up 1.0 with that Krista model, like making it mandatory to purchase that, because there was some kind of legality thing or something where they were going like, okay, well, we can make them buy this non-refundable currency and then use that as the foundation of stuff.
I think a large part of that was because of the idea of chargebacks, which back then was a huge thing between Square and usually like RMT accounts. And so this is kind of one of those like, okay, well, they're ruining it for the rest of you. Sorry. But I mean, even in 14, at one point they're like, oh, your account is suspended because you had a chargeback, and it's like,
yep.
Fucking no, I don't. The bank has no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
Like it was just this whole thing. It was such a headache. Yeah,
chargeback was a scary word. Late 11, early 14.
You hear that and you're like, well, I guess I'm never playing this
account.
game ever again.
Yeah.
Because they would just ban you.
Are you kidding me? They would ban
honestly,
you if like you didn't
honestly,
have the funds to go through?
if
you charged it back.
Yeah, honestly, if I wasn't in the position that I was, where like I knew people at Square Enix, I don't know if I would still be playing 14 right now, because it was just like, they're like, oh, it says you have a chargeback. Okay, well, I called my bank and they don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's wild to me.
Yeah, I lost my garden that week because I couldn't log in. This is when gardening was like new too, right?
Yeah.
You could make like big bucks on this, and I'm like, cool, can't log in.
My money.
There's my money.
I mean,
yeah.
I guess Krista, in a sense, would offer some security then, even for players coming into the game initially, where like, you have to buy that currency, and then there is that bit of time delay, and then you put that currency towards what you're doing. I guess in a sense, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, what a huge convoluted mess. I'm not surprised. Like, I can't imagine now in this day and age, if I were to sign up for a new MMO and they required upon sign up that I buy their cash shop currency, and that was the only way, and I had to buy it in bulk or something. So, it's like, oh, you need what?
See, here's the thing though. If that came out today, you could only buy it in increments that weren't realistic.
Yeah,
at least with Krista, you can buy the exact amount that you need, which is like Very good.
Okay.
Like
Did it not start that way?
that,
I'm trying to remember.
don't know.
That's why people had weird extra leftover
I
numbers.
I think it's true.
That could be. Yeah, I know now you can.
Especially if you had like a legacy account.
I think it was the
less.
legacy bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the It's interesting to me that Krista was like the gacha game type of crystals, but also the WoW token eventually. Because it was more used like a WoW token is supposed to be used without the in-game money thing. And it had that idea of, well, you could use it on other Square Enix stuff, which never happened.
Nope.
So, you know.
We
No.
don't want that. We don't
Yeah.
want it.
They had this grand vision, and then they ended up using the third-party store websites that they did, and it just was terrible.
Interesting.
I do.
Well, go ahead, Zed.
I was gonna say the one of the things I'm recalling that actually did really, I guess, upset me at the time, when the official release happened of 1.0, it was very similar to the Endwalker release in terms of there is no place for you to make an account and get on. Like make a character and get on. You can go through character creation, but when you get to the part where you're like, I would like to be on this server, that server is full, you cannot go.
Yep.
Oh, really?
So I had to wait like 3 or 4 days to actually get on the RP server with all my friends.
Yep.
Oh no, jeez. And this was coming out of the alpha beta into 1.0 kind of period. Like that, you just literally couldn't actually even really get an account on there to be able to play with everybody. Jeez. I mean, yeah, it makes sense why these reviews were all so bad, and public opinion was so bad.
Which is wild because they did do server mergers.
Yep.
for 1.0 too. So it's like, oh man.
When Besaid was merged with Fabul to make Balmung.
Yep.
I too was on Besaid.
Yeah. I was on Besaid.
I think Besaid was my second character. I forget what server I was on originally, but I ended up I must have known somebody on Besaid, and I was fairly into the game because I remember I had all of the Unionite pieces from the guild leaves that you could get.
Oh, nice.
But then I made a new character on Besaid, and that was the character that I ended up sticking with. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that goes into the early part of 1.0.
So many
What
things.
was good about it? What was okay? So like
Out of
pre 1.18 or 1.2 or whatever, where the job system showed up. What was good about 1.0?
Wait, what are we talking about initially?
Early. I mean, before the job system.
Behest.
Okay. Yeah.
This was cool. I liked. Well, no, that would have come after. I was gonna say Hamlet. That came after.
Yeah.
That was later.
There he is talking about Hamlet again.
Behest was kind of like Fates, but set up in a different way.
Yeah.
You had to like show up and talk to a dude, and we're like, "I'm gonna do this," and they were like, "Okay," and then a bunch of people go and do an event.
Yeah. Eisinger in the chat says the attempt at player-driven economy was pretty cool. Yes, the Valley of the Dolls of your retainers selling things. Yeah.
No, I didn't like that.
The creepy
Because there's
mannequin
no market
halls.
for it.
I
had to check every one of
remember
them.
I had the article might still be on Gamerscape actually. I'm like when this was all new, I'm like, all right, this system sucks, but let's look at this. Let's see how bad it is. And I'm like, I am gonna go and look for a new lance, which took like hours because I had to go into the thing, talk to every single retainer in that ward. Did I ever find the lance? I honestly don't remember, but but that
You know
was
what I did really like?
I would say the idea for anybody who doesn't know, because I've had this explained to me by the cast.
yeah.
So the idea was that as a player, there was no universal market board in 1.0, right? So you had to literally, like, there were areas where players would just set up shops, essentially, and you would stand there and people would walk up to you and see what you were selling and then buy from you. Your retainers.
You stuck your retainer in this like big dark open room with 1,000 other retainers. So it was like Westworld, the basement of Westworld, but everybody had clothes on.
Oh my god, it was.
Yeah.
I had never thought to make that comparison, but that's absolutely accurate, and that's amazing.
I kind of like, because so I was just doing a little bit of 11 and Fusion was telling me that it used to be that as players you would go and there would be like hubs where you would set up shops.
You can
and you
rent
would stand
outside
there.
too now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
We talked about that.
To me, I actually do find something about that charming if it's like you setting up a shop, because I feel like it does open up the possibility of haggling, where like people could actually approach you and try to haggle a price with you, where you could make custom orders, where you could role play as like a crafter gatherer in like a real sense. But as we've seen in modern day with Elder Scrolls Online, for example, which actually uses the same kind of system where you have like a shop front that your guild bids on and purchases and then can list public sales in. And you have to do exactly this to this day in modern day MMOs in ESO. They have this system where you have to go around and check every single person to see if they're selling this thing. And like obviously coming out of 1.0, the horrific basement of dolls situation had real drawbacks when you were just trying to get something, you were just trying to price check. I mean, even now in 14, we have so many problems trying to even figure out with world travel, where's the best price for this thing on this market board over here? How do I get to, right? So I can totally see why it was a huge issue, but I do find something charming, at least within the concept.
I
was
loved the idea of being able to rent a stall in these market wards. I thought that was really cool. It was a way to kind of be like,
They were really hard to get though, because there were like 8 to 16 of them. So
it was just
first come, first serve. You get it.
Yeah. So
there
it's
was
like
a website, very similar to how ESO has that mod, you know, where you can like type in what you want and it'll tell you based on the information it's picked up. So there was a website that did that for retainers in 14 in 1.0, and so you'd go and you'd have to search this whole ward for the retainer you wanted. And they weren't in any kind of order, and they weren't like in pretty lines either.
Scattered.
They were just plopped the fuck in there.
And originally too, they had no animations on them, so they were literally just mannequins. And then they added the subtle animations, and it was just really creepy.
It was creepier. And they did that whole thing where if you were far away from a person, they disappeared. So you'd have to like go to a cluster, look at the cluster, move to another cluster, look at that cluster. It was not good. It was not good at all. No.
Good old remember good old Crystal Tools limitations. Remember Crystal Tools?
Crystal Tools.
What are Crystal Tools?
Crystal Tools was
this
the
from
name.
1.0?
Yes, this was the name of the engine that that 14 ran on. And we've heard. I mean, I'm sure Rook, you've seen the GDC talks about the flower barrel with 10 bajillion polygons.
Yes.
So this was an issue with Crystal Tools where you couldn't display a lot of characters on screen at the same time. This was also an engine that they developed internally, knowing that they would use it for an MMO. And it still ended up like this.
Yep.
The Crystal Tools is what Final Fantasy 13 games run on.
Yes.
So it's the same engine that they used. And then when 2.0 was being worked on, they're like, okay, we need to fix so many things. And now they use Unreal.
I mean, okay, so again, more context. The barrel thing, in case anybody else hasn't heard of that, was the fact that like they tried on this engine, from my understanding, to make every single object so incredibly dense in like the amount of detail that it had, that it would didn't it cause like terrible lag, it caused loading in issues, it caused all these like weird problems for people.
The resource usage of 1.0, it was a very chonky boy.
So like we think about now in modern 14, the grapes that had to be scaled down, you know, rip the beautiful grapes. But
each
like,
one of those grapes
literally
would have had like 5,000 triangles on it in 1.0.
It'd been beautiful, but you wouldn't have been able to see it from like 5 yums away at all.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it'd been great. It would cost you 5 FPS, but they would have looked immaculate.
Were there any other good things or good adjacent things you can all remember from early 11 or early 1.0? Early 1.0.
I enjoyed NMs. So this was a thing they had. This was a thing they had in 11. Rook knows this. We fought Leaping Lizzie last night. Of course, the boots didn't drop. But they did have NMs.
I wasn't even going to ask.
Yeah, they did have NMs in 14. And they you know, just like in 11, they had special gear that they would drop. And yeah, I mean, there was they had a title for getting all of them in 1.02, Notorious Monster Hunter. So yeah, especially coming from 11, right? Having that kind of like mindset of like, this is what an MMO is. This is a thing that you could do in an MMO. Like that felt really good. And so it was nice to have that. But now any kind of like NM, it's basically just like, it's a fate.
It's just there.
Yeah.
Battle Regimen. I will say that I like it because what Battle Regimen was basically your party stacking their attacks to do a thing. So, like, if someone did a normal attack, someone else did a normal attack, it would lower the physical defense of the target, right? Like, if you did it in order, like these, like, flagged attacks. It reminded me of the weapon skill combo in 11.
I think that's what it was probably derived from. So in 11, each weapon skill would have, like, an elemental attribute attached to it. And if you comboed that with something else, you'd get a pretty effective, do a little more damage. And then if you had a mage that casted a corresponding magic element, you could magic burst it and do even more damage. So with 14, they're like, okay, here, this is a game. Remember, alpha let you charge attacks up to like 3 bars, and it really didn't end up doing anything extra. But they're like, okay, we're gonna have this system. It's called Battle Regimen, where basically the idea is you communicate with your party and you queue up all of your attacks, wait, and then execute. And it'll do, all the attacks will go off. If you put it in a certain order that I don't know that the game ever really told you what good orders were, right? It was kind of one of those figure it out things. And so for a while, people were like, I'm just going to spam this and Battle Regimen, cool. And it was like, all right, this is kind of a thing. And then people found out how to really do it. And then they took it out of the game because they're like, oh shit, that's really good. Like they were dropping the Darkhold boss like instantly from like getting a really solid Battle Regimen.
I really love the idea of that cooperation to make a combo out of your party. Like that's really cool. Yeah. That's what I really liked about 11. I enjoyed being that caster, that magic burst, Yeah,
that was fun.
Hitting that timing was really fun. So like Battle Regimen, I'll tell you one thing that was not good. I really have to talk about it. I have to talk about the fatigue system.
Is that
That's good. Yeah, let's transition because I think the amount of good things are
I have one.
A small handful.
Oh, you have a good thing? Yeah, let's do that good thing first.
Do the good thing.
Yeah.
It's fast and simple, and you didn't lose XP when you died.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
On the other side of that, though,
I did like. I honestly kind of liked the setup of most of the early classes, not jobs, classes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed playing both Conjure and Thaumaturge because you had like your half Umbral and then half Astral thing. Conjure had the Astrals, Thaumaturge had the Umbral. So they were both casters and both healers. So you could play either, and whichever role needed to be filled, you filled. So I thought that was
1.0.
So technically, I started as... I think I started as an archer and then moved into Conjurer very quickly.
Yeah,
I was a lancer.
The options you had with a class in 1.0 were
you could heal on Bard.
Yeah,
you could tank. You could heal. No. You could heal. You could cast Cure while running on Bard, so you were unkillable. You were running in a circle, kiting a notorious monster, damaging it. When you were low enough, you'd cure yourself and keep running. It was great.
One of my favorite videos from a guy we used to do this show with us back in the day. He tanked one of the World Spawn NMs as a white mage because he could wear heavy armor. Or I'm sorry, as a Thaumaturge Conjure. I feel like they swapped him in 2.0.
Yeah,
but whatever the healer one was, heavy armor and just was the tank. And it's just like you wouldn't be able to do anything like that now.
To the market area, I was going to say earlier, you could sell back anything. If you used a weapon, it did not bind to you. If you used armor, it did not bind to you. So when you were done with it, you could sell it back, which was really nice, especially like the stuff that was like semi-hard to get or find. Or craft. Crafting.
I remember that.
That'll be in the later stuff. Oh, Jesus.
Were there any other good points from any point in 1.0? Any good takeaways where you were like, I really liked this? I will say that although I was not in 1.0, right? I do like some of the story that they had. I've read
Sure.
through a lot of the like old logs. I've read through some of the character setup. I mean, some of the stuff with Minfilia and Thancred obviously made it in later, but there were a lot of kind of foundational things for a lot of the characters that did happen in 1.0 that they then built off of in 2.0 and beyond, that I'm glad they've kind of reintroduced in some way, shape, or form, because it did feel as though a lot of the concepts and ideas and like even some of the original basis of the nations and things like that got some interesting little tidbits in 1.0. Of course, they went a different direction in 2.0, but just from what I've seen from the outside, I still find it fun to like go dig around through ancient archives or, you know, old footage to try and see how they kind of did stuff.
One of the coolest things, and this ended up coming kind of towards the end of 1.0, so it's jumping ahead just a little bit.
Stop.
Wolf. Wow. All right.
Simon says go.
They had NPCs controlled by GMs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as they were kind of gearing up for that big finale, they would have GMs take control of what were the newspaper reporter NPCs.
It's cool, right?
As well
So cool.
as like Urion J and Nail Van Darnus, and they would just walk around and, you know, in character, right, talk about like, oh, the Urion J and the Scions, or the not the Scions, the what did they call them?
Archons?
Archons, yeah. These Archons are causing trouble. Don't believe them. Like, it was this whole like weird thing where they would just, it was great.
That took me back to the Matrix Online, which is a MMO
Yes.
that existed for a little while,
Yes.
where people were
Sweet
Morpheus and Merovingian.
Yeah.
So
what do you
that
do
was
for your
cool.
job, Ted? I log into the Matrix Online and I'm the French guy. What?
Yep. The music. There's a lot of good music.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, Final Fantasy.
I am so bummed. Like don't get me wrong, Soken stuff is phenomenal. But I really wish they would have kept a lot more of the 1.0 music than they did. Twilight Over Thanalan was like such a beautiful track. That was one of the first pieces from
back in the game.
A lot of it's still in the game somewhere. But like Twilight Over Thanalan, that was one of the first pieces from 14 that they orchestrated for a Disney Worlds concert. As well as what was it, Beneath Bloody Banners, which was like one of the fight themes from 1.0. That initial the original Limsa town music, which this is gonna go back a little bit. That original Limsa track is the only Final Fantasy 14 town theme to have been rearranged by the Black Mages. Remember the Black Mages?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Of course, this is
Uematsu.
Uematsu had a rock band. Yeah, a lot of synth.
It's
but
the old finals.
this technically it wasn't the Black Mages. They jokingly called themselves, because this was at a Vanafest event. They called themselves the Tokyo Businessmen.
Yep.
And so they played Limsa, and then they had played
I have a question for you. The city states, so the city states, because you mentioning Limsa and all these other areas, are they similar in now to how they were in 1.0, or
they
are those zones different?
Old Da is like exactly the same.
Yeah.
The difference back then was originally Old Da was one seamless zone. 14 did a thing where, like, if you went out to, like, let's say Thanalan, it was just Thanalan, and then they had little kind of narrow passageways, right, that were kind of like the loading corridors. So like if you were in Thanalan, you were just in Thanalan.
That's right. That big gate that you go through now was closed.
Yeah, you could walk from Thanalan and just go through a gate into Old Da. It wasn't just like this little dotted line and it zones in. It was just you walk into it.
Yeah, it was seamless.
Which was really cool.
It was really cool, yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, like,
but not sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, I remember they had an update when they were like, okay, so like here's the imaginary loading barrier now for Old Da because the load was just too bad in it. I think Gridania is the most changed.
Yeah.
This is very similar. but
Limsa
they
is
also
similar, but they moved the Aetheryte before.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, the amount of locations the Aetheryte
Aetheryte
in
is
Limsa has had
where
during
the
development.
Grand Company is now.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
That's where it
originally,
was.
right, if you've seen that 1.0 cinematic, originally the Aetheryte for Limsa was going to be right there at the bar, right next to the guild leaf counter, and they're like, maybe that's not a good place for it. That might be too congested. So in 1.0, it was where the Grand Company stuff is now, but all it was just like this little kind of hut with bridges connected to it and the Aetheryte. That's all it was.
Limsa was much more expansive too. I
Yeah.
loved the setup for Limsa in 1.0. There were so many just like little tiny nooks and docks and just caves and shit you could go. It was
I remember
super
when they
great for
added the
RPs.
staircase by the Fisherman's Guild to make it easier
Oh,
to get
yeah.
around. They're just like, we're just gonna add a staircase.
But yeah, when we saw the
yeah.
maps for the 2.0 version, I am not gonna lie, I was sad. I was like, they got rid of my favorite little area. It
They
was
got
this, like,
rid of
long
my
dock,
favorite
and
Aw.
NPC in Limsa, and I will never
Yeah.
forgive
I
them.
remember you
they
mentioning.
probably died.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's part of the weird thing about it too. Oh, they're not around anymore. Well, they probably died in the calamity.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, thanks.
rest in
No, but
peace,
it is
piss pirate.
it is cool that it is cool that they there's a good reason why big chunks of the docks and
Yeah.
caves and shit in Limsa are gone because they probably got exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then
Um,
another question.
along
Oh, go ahead.
along those lines, just something I want to add really quick. If you could get over the fact that the areas were very copy paste, extremely,
Yeah.
there were some beautiful sites out there, and things were in some places things were a little bit more not exactly expansive, but slightly more intricate. Again, because they were sort of copy pasted around themselves, but
Yeah.
hmm
They
Yeah. I
didn't
mean,
have to spend the time
just in
designing.
those just in those first areas though, I think they've moved beyond that in the newer areas.
Mhm.
So in 1.0 then, did a lot of it sounds like it was heavily inspired by some of the content and style of 11, obviously. Notorious monsters and things that you were mentioning. Did they have what we kind of consider to be instanced content in 1.0? They had
not
these
until
dungeons.
later.
Not at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
1.0 was just open world, and a lot of that, that idea of not
Oh my gosh.
technically
Places
loading.
like Sastasha, you just walked into.
Well,
Like
no,
you
no, no,
literally
not
just walked right into
Sastasha.
it.
Not
It was
Sastasha.
called something else.
It was called Spoche, the game's
Spoche, yeah.
first open world dungeon.
Yeah.
If you went through it and killed all the NMs, then you get to the coral and you could get yourself
Mines
an
in
eye patch.
Thanalan? What are they called?
The Copperbell.
Copperbell.
Copperbell
Yeah.
mines.
Yeah.
You would just walk into the mines.
Yep.
Just walk into it. Which I really, really miss and loved. Again, very copy paste,
it
but like
was-
you just
yeah.
walk directly into the dungeon. It was so cool.
I would
Yeah.
love if they did something like that. Like ESO kind of has a thing like that where there are these delves, which they are technically, you do like cross through a little threshold and you go into them, but they have like these locations on the map and stuff, and they are kind of like smaller scale dungeons that have more of an open world feel, right? Like you kind of come into them and there's usually like a boss at the end and there might be stuff to find and there's little things, right? But they are not dungeons. They are this sort of intermediary exploratory thing on a map that sort of fleshes out some of the story and little things about the region. And I would love if we did have on our maps in 14 almost like little mini delves or little dungeon things that you could still go around it and then still have our instant content. But it would be great to have something like that. So I like that 1.0 tried to do that because it does feel like maybe one of the weaknesses 2.0 on has been the open world content. And I wonder how much of that was like a design mentality both in MMOs, but also just with the shift away from some of that 11 precedent and some of the things that had gone so wrong.
It was definitely they wanted to kind of focus down a little bit. I mean, I think one of the biggest things, we say copy paste a lot for the 1.0 areas. And while like Thanalan, right, it did have distinguishable areas, right? But it was just a lot of big deserty, sandy, rocky stuff that, right, you look at it, you're like, okay, this is the same thing, right? At a glance. So with 2.0, and I mean, I remember when they were talking about 2.0 before it came out, they said, okay, each area is going to have like X amount of like landmarks, things that look cool, things that are interesting. And I think a lot of that was a result of just having that openness in 1.0.
when they added flight recently, quite
Yeah.
recently,
Mm.
and you fly over places like Thanalan, you can see the way that they worked the old places in 1.0 into the map a little bit more. Like walking
Mhm.
underneath of it, I feel like it's less obvious, but like you're
Mm.
flying over the what is that area with like the broken ruins and like bubbly burny fade? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh.
It's like just beyond Horizon and before
Okay.
the Waking Sands. That
Oh,
area
so
in
like
there.
little
Okay.
marshy
Near
area.
Silver Bazaar.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that area. From below you can't really tell, but when you fly over it, it looks exactly like the area did in 1.0.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we covered, I think, a lot of good things and unique things about 1.0, but now, what were some of the biggest changes and bad things from 1.0 that needed to be addressed?
We all just start talking. It's a
I'm
cacophony,
gonna
and we're like, no,
right.
that's how it was.
I'm gonna start in the in between.
Sure.
Because this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot with 1.0. I feel like characters used to have momentum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You would like if you like
Sidestep.
started to move, you would like take a second to like get up to full speed, and if you stopped, like you had to. It was this weird subtle thing, like and
you couldn't jump.
and you couldn't jump.
No, there was no jump.
There was no jump. It's one of those weird things where I think it was kind of cool, but with the way that 2.0 works, there's no like. Could you imagine like, oh, sorry guys, I didn't start moving soon enough. I didn't get my momentum built up.
Oh my goodness.
And oh, you know what? And one more thing to you before we get into the really bad stuff. Incapacitation.
I don't even remember that.
You could knock off certain parts of
Yeah.
enemies.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was cool though.
Yeah, you could fight a skeleton and knock off its head and get an eye patch. You could when they introduced Ifrit, you could chop off one of
Break his
Ifrit's horns.
Yeah.
And that would give you like an advantage in the fight. I thought that was such a cool thing. And then in 2.0, it was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about
yeah.
crafting?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't do any of that.
So bad. It was very bad. Oh my goodness, was it terrible. So I'm gonna talk about what I can remember. I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
I
Just, like, trying to
had like a
block it out of my
mission
head.
in alpha to like make a shirt. So I have some experience with the old
Okay,
crafting.
Well, there were a lot of different ingredients, and each different item had its own ingredient, and you had to, like, if you wanted to make a shirt, for example, you had to dye the cloth first. You couldn't dye it beforehand. Each item came out a color ahead of time. And then things did have the depreciating what's it called?
Where
broke.
or
Things broke.
duration or
Condition.
not,
Yeah.
durability.
Condition.
Durability.
Durability was the word. Okay, so yes, things broke. And you had to fix them, but they didn't have dark matter yet. You had to use things like Fent, which was just like a scrap. It's a patch for your shirt. It's a piece of fabric.
Oh my
And
God.
you had to make sure that it was the right fabric for your shirt, and it so each different item, each different piece had a different thing you needed. So you needed to fix armor, you needed a plate. If you needed to fix your cloth, you needed a Fent. If you needed to fix blah, you needed this other thing.
Yeah.
And it was so convoluted, and you're just like, it is easier to just buy a new one.
But don't forget one of the best repair items. If you wanted to repair your Starlight boots, you needed that damn dormouse fur from these high level little bastards.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
They were so hard to kill. Oh
It's like,
my
on one
God.
hand, the immersion is real with that
Mhm.
kind of idea.
Uh-huh.
Like, I do like there needing to be some kind of purpose, I guess, to, yes, oh, maybe this is a really special rare item, so you have to get this really special rare stuff to use on it or to create it or to, like, I like that concept, but at the same time, when I think about the fact, I mean, now, in 1.0, correct me if I'm wrong, were they still at that point designing with the mindset that you could play the entire game as a crafter gatherer?
Yes.
Yes, they
Mhm.
sure
No.
were.
having that kind, like the story and everything. This was like supposed to be a thing that you could play either in combat or you could craft
It was,
together.
and the way they did it was so ridiculous too. Like, right on paper, right? It's like a really cool idea. The idea of like, like we're gonna like flesh out crafters and gatherers as like their own classes. And they're gonna have all their own abilities and stuff. So like if you're like a botanist and you're like, oh, like the Amalja are gonna summon Ifrit, you would basically play a parlay minigame with the NPC instead of doing the Ifrit fight to progress the story.
Which is cute.
kind of.
It's like, look,
it's
I
really
know you're
cute.
summoning your primal, but if we could just take a minute to talk about gemstones,
Yes.
that would be
Don't, man, just
appreciated.
don't.
I
It'll be
mean,
cool if you
I
don't.
genuinely kind of unironically love that. I love the idea of being like, what's your community needing? What are the goals you need? Okay, well, I can get you these, I can get you this food or these seeds for these crops you need. I can help alleviate the stress, or I can set up new trade routes, or I mean, I'm always that person that
That's
likes to
so
buff,
in
like,
depth. This was
charisma
just
skills.
literally the like, and we have this now. We have it. If you have your toy box in your house or your apartment, it's just this weird little mini game.
I mean, I do love the concept. I love the idea.
Yeah.
The execution sounds like maybe it did not quite come together. I mean, even if you were creating gear to gear out trusts or something who then would go fight it for you. I mean, something like that I also think is a clever way to usurp this. So in that sense, I can see why maybe they made things so overly complex for crafters and gatherers. I mean, in theory, if that was supposed to be an entire play style and like an entire thing that you did in the game, I can understand the mentality of, all right, we really want these robust and complex systems that people have to learn and master. But really when it does come down to it, as MMOs have developed, this idea of that being the backbone of your game is really not such a thing unless you are playing a, I don't know, farm simulator that has multiplayer or something like that, right?
Kimmy in the chat. I'm a parlay with Endsinger. Could you imagine going up to Endsinger and be like, "Look, I know you want to like end all life everywhere, but can we just take a minute to talk about the benefits of salamander oil?"
I'm saying she talked a lot about how much she wanted a candied apple. So if you were a culinarian and you get to the end and the most emotional thing you can do for this sad space monster is to give her a straight up candy apple.
Parlay notification, new topic, candied apples.
I would have cried like a baby probably. And you get like a different cutscene where she has this emotional. I mean, look, I kind of want that, but also I realized that it would suck. So
there definitely was, I think, an increased level of immersion,
right?
That we don't
what's
have.
Super great about crafting. You could walk up to a friend who had leveled crafting and be like, "Can you fix my gear?" And they'd be like, "Bam, you're good."
Yeah,
your friends could fix your gear for you. That's what we have menders for now. But menders are not standing out front of the dungeon you're about to run with your friends.
Or in the instance with you. I would love it if you had Crafter Gatherer leveled and you could use that in an instance or something. That would be so great. Okay,
I
so what are
miss
some
changing jobs in dungeons. That was cool.
you could change jobs in dungeons?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was actually part of the strategy for a lot of them. It's like, all right, we need like 4 monks. No, you absolutely could. So it's like, oh, we need 4 monks to beat up the Marlborough, but that's done. So let's go change into
remember
ninjas
that at
and
all.
white mages.
I just remember doing Bard because I
wasn't there,
I was the speed bitch for the thing. Remember timed chests? Timed chests were a thing where if you beat a dungeon under a certain amount of time, you get an extra chest. That was a thing.
I do
You
like
would
that idea.
Peloton everybody through that dungeon.
Okay.
That was cool.
Because we still have so many more years ahead of us. We haven't even hit 2.0 yet.
Yeah.
What were some of the other bullet points of content that everybody is like, this was a huge problem and it needed to be changed?
Fatigue. We don't have to talk about it. Look it up. It was stupid.
It's
It was the worst MMO system ever
There's a
made.
video on how it works, and it doesn't either.
Yep.
Fatigue was, I think, like, yes, it was bad, but I think more importantly, what it served to do is the discussion that came about from it really highlighted the communication problems that the developers had with the players. That's what ultimately came out of it.
Yeah.
because this was a system that existed in betas, before the game went live. Players knew it was a problem, but the dev team did such a really bad job of communicating this system, what it was supposed to do. And they, the at face value, it seems like they didn't give a shit about the feedback about it either. It was bad.
It was why I quit 1.0, because what they were saying about this system, which, not getting into the specifics, but they were basically saying the system to limit your experience gain would keep everyone on the same level. Hardcore players who wanted to spend 8 hours a day would hit a cap and have to diversify. Casual players would never ever see that cap. And it was gated by week. But if you start the game 4 weeks after everyone else, you will literally never catch up because you have the same limitation. It was the most stupid MMO.
They also had class levels and physical levels.
Yeah.
As well, which is
right.
that was the thing.
What was a physical level? Like,
it was your level versus your job's level. So you would switch from like Conjurer to Marauder, and your level would still be up high, but Marauder might be itty bitty. So you had like a little bit of a boost, which is kind of
I think the way I would explain that is, now that you know about skill ups in Final Fantasy XI, right? Physical level was a way of like all your skill ups and stuff are still retained on you, but then you can switch jobs, but you still have those perks. Which
it almost seems to me like weird. They kind of morphed that into the armory bonus for like the highest level class that you have. It now gives you that proportional boost on like experience. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there was a lot of discourse around the time with the fatigue system about, well, it's just the reverse of the rested XP system where you go into a place, don't play, and you get extra experience. It's not, because you can play as much as you want with rested and still catch up if you're a couple of weeks behind. This literally hard gated every week.
You would get to a point on any class, battle, gather, crafter, where it's just like, no, like, that's cool that you're doing this, but you're not getting XP anymore. Please go outside and touch grass.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. It's so terrible.
And I mean, you gotta imagine too, though. I mean, this did come out at a point, right? Looking at the kind of history of everything, where 11 since its inception, right? You start 11. Please remember your friends, your family, your school, your work, and all this stuff. And then, a handful of years before 14 landed, Linkshell spends literally 24 hours fighting boss in Final Fantasy 11, has to stop because people start throwing up. So they're like, okay, we don't want this press again in this game. So what can we do? Let's physically just say they can't progress after they've played a certain amount of time.
But it was the way that they presented it, where it was like, well, this is more equitable. This helps everyone. No, it doesn't. You're just saying that because you're trying to cover
the communication
for this issue.
Was awful with it, absolutely awful. And I mean, that's part of what made things so great when Yoshida came on, because his first thing was like transparency. We are going to talk to the players. We are going to communicate everything.
That's a good segue to go into the like end of 1.0 hype for 2.0. Because he came out of nowhere. Yoshi P. I remember looking him up and going, Dragon Quest X. Okay.
Bomberman?
I remember being woken up by my now wife the night that happened. Was she still in Japan? I can't remember. But it was, it was one of those things, because they would, because of the time difference, right, between like Japan and NA, a lot of their like news stuff on the Lodestone would go up at like 2 a.m. or something, like at crazy hours. And I just remember being told, you need to look at Lodestone right now. And TLDR, Tanaka is out. We're replacing him with some guy you have never heard of. And it's like, what is going on over there?
So what then do you all remember specifically from the end of an era? What all do you remember from this unbelievable, unparalleled ending? I mean, the idea to not only just go, hey, this was a failure, we need to redo it. I mean, that was a huge risk. And we've talked about them before, but a couple of really great documentaries for anybody who might want more information about this. There is a fantastic no-clip documentary about this, and then there's also one by Speakers of Heidelin. So those two documentaries will give you far more insight into this as well. But what do all of you remember specifically from that ending? The events, the stuff that happened, the final day, the servers shut down.
I remember.
What do you think?
There was a really weird period towards the end where they said they established certain things, right? So they're like, okay, we like legacy subscriptions, right? People that have been subbing to this game, because for a long time, 14 1.0 had a subscription, and then Yoshida came out and said, this game is awful. We cannot in good conscience charge for this game right now. So they killed the sub. And then after a couple patches, they're like, okay, we're going to resume the sub again. And when they announced 2.0, they're like, okay, if you have supported this game in what it has been to this point, for X amount of time, we're just going to discount your sub when we relaunch this thing. So that was kind of wild doing that, knowing that there were certain achievements in the game that would be gone, and having the time to actively say, okay, I'm going to try and get as many of these titles as I can before that cutoff date. And it was weird because the cutoff date for it wasn't when the servers went down. There was it was a few weeks at least where the game was live, but any type of progression would not be saved or carried over into 2.0. During this time, we would get the I think they called it Answers Reprise, that played. Dalamud was low in the sky. You would just have a couple of years ago when we had the Rising event where you had that instance in the city where you would fight things. That was happening in the game on a daily basis. That was the thing to log in and do. You could log out by sleeping at an inn, wake up, and it's just like, oh, you found a relic weapon. Oh crap, stuff is going down. And it was just like this really weird period of time. And then I remember the night of the servers were hit so hard that night. I was disconnecting
a bunch of people come
left and
back
right.
to like
Oh yeah. Lots of people coming back. Lots of people going over to Mordona, right? Because everybody, that was kind of we knew like that's probably where stuff was gonna go down with Dalamud and stuff. And then just man, having the servers go out for the last time and then being like, all right, here's like the video, and it's just like like absolutely insane. Oh, it's not just a moon, it was actually like an egg for Bahamut, and now like he just like killed everything. What the hell is going on? And they're like, all right, see you in like another year.
I was literally at Zen's house that night because we had all gotten together for something. I don't remember what. It wasn't that because I wasn't playing it. Maybe it was that. Yeah, but I just remember watching
New Year's, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, I just remember watching it because I had stopped playing for a long time. My girlfriend had started playing because I was like, I'm not playing this. And Zen was like, well, she could play an RP with me. And I'm like, I really hate the idea of giving them any money. I really hated 1.0. But okay, fine, whatever.
Tricked her into it.
Yeah. And I was like, fine, whatever, she could play. Because I was paying for it. And it was my computer. Like, still. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. If you want to play it, that's okay. But yeah, so that night, I will never forget being there, understanding most of it, but not understanding how big a deal it was going to be. Right.
Yeah, I remember I streamed it, and I don't think I have the footage anymore, which sucks. But I can remember watching an era like on stream and just being like completely speechless. And it was absolutely wild. And I mean, and this was such a weird thing for the fan sites around, because there were so many more fan sites back then than there are now. And it was really weird because now you had this weird lull. Like Like they're working on this
And
game.
you want to play Guild Wars 2?
It's coming, but like literally there
it's
is
good, yes.
there is no active game to play right now. So a lot of people went back to 11. And we're jumping on Seekers of Adeline for a while, but I will never forget being at E3 that year between 1.0 and 2.0. Because like running a site costs money. I don't know if people have tried this. There's especially for something the size of what we do. We were not making any money during this time period, and so we joked, okay, we can keep the site up for another month, or we can go get lunch. And I said, I don't know, I'm kind of hungry.
My gosh. I mean, it's incredible to hear about all of this after the fact, even. Obviously, I wasn't in the game. And I see even in chat, Terrell saying, talking about this gives me chills, and I wasn't even there. And it's the same for me because I've watched those documentaries. I've heard, you know, the interviews about behind the scenes. I've listened to all of you share what happened and all of the stuff from the GMs taking over characters to the special events that were running, the Gubu wall that was built outside of one of the cities.
I remember the Gubu wall. I was so happy when they came out and talked about it in game, and I was like, I was there.
Yes. All of these crackpot theories that were happening about the moon getting bigger. Is it bigger? Is it smaller?
Yeah.
Is it?
There's a second moon? What is going on?
Yes, like to see the footage of, you know, people literally getting together, standing together on hills. I have friends even who were legacy players that have screenshots from then when they all got together and watched as the world ended and burned, and this cutscene that happened. And I mean, it is just such an incredible moment in gaming history, period, right? Like not even just in 14, but in history in games, like across the board. There are so few games I can think of that ever did something like this to create a moment in time that players experienced and then to roll over. I mean, that not knowing, I mean, this will transition us perfectly into 2.0,
I
which
really
is...
would like to share something.
Go ahead, no, Zen, go ahead.
So what I really remember from the end there is we talked about the moon getting bigger. At first, when it first happened, people noticed. Some people noticed and were like, am I crazy? Is that? And then the next time it happened, we're like, oh, we're not crazy. Okay, cool. So by the end, the moon was huge in the sky, and it was just such a thing to look at. But like I said earlier, the reason I played the game the whole time was to RP. So I was RPing a character who was watching the world end and had to make choices about whether or not they were going to go run and hide or go out to Cartano and fight the Garleans as the moon was hitting their home. And that had a really big impact on me as far as storytelling and like emotions that I was capable of feeling. And just that last night, I was there, you know, in person with Denitra and Charles, but I was also on Cartano Flats with a free company of mercenaries who had been spending all of this time trying to keep the world from exploding. And it was really impactful.
That's amazing. I love it. And like, those are the little mini side stories that happen. Like, those are the things that you will never read in game about those events, but they were a part of the world. And they shaped people's, you know, emotions and feelings, even if it was just, you know, a group of mercenaries who were out there trying their best as they watched their efforts go to nothing.
Yeah. Moving into 2.0, I decided to have my character be one of the ones that was moved forward in time. So that actually affected other characters who thought that they were dead. So when we all came back together a year later, I got a bunch of, holy shit, you're alive.
That's
It was really interesting. Yeah.
I love it. So unless anybody else has anything else they want to say specifically about 1.0? Okay.
I miss Hamlet defense battles.
Okay. That does take us to A Realm Reborn. And like Sinidra mentioned, we had people who did choose to carry over their characters who have those legacy tattoos. I've always wished I could go back and like be a part of it myself somehow, but it's incredible to even see that. So we had the earlier review from IGN that happened, which takes us into the follow-up review from IGN in 2.0. The first one being a disaster for 1.0, and now coming into IGN's for 2.0, which says, in the beginning, there was Final Fantasy XIV, and it was not good. For most games, the story would have ended there. But Square Enix undertook a mammoth effort to keep Final Fantasy's legacy from being marred by such a disaster. Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn is the resulting do-over, and it's a huge success. Beautiful, fun, and only a bit uneven in the late game. This dramatic reinvention easily establishes itself as one of the most sincere and effective apologies in gaming history.
I mean, and
know,
that's
doesn't it get you?
and that's I
Yeah,
mean
it
that's what it was. I mean, you know, the initial reviews came out for 1.0, and there absolutely was this, well, Final Fantasy is like complete garbo now, and like nobody's ever gonna love the series ever again.
Yeah.
Like, it was a huge hit to the brand overall,
Right.
especially in a period of time where I think a lot of fans of the series were very divisive over
Yeah.
13.
Disillusion. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for 14 to come out with 1.0, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was part of Yoshida's job, right? It's like, okay, you have to come in here, and you're not just like updating the game or like making a version 2. You're like literally trying to like salvage the entire brand of the series. And that's just the thought of that. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it's incredible. So, what do you all remember from like 2.0? Was the release everything you hoped? I mean, I can talk about it myself coming into the core game when I did in Heavensward, but did you feel like this re-release to you felt that as players?
Oh man, it was re-released on a wedding anniversary. I don't remember which one, but I was like, "So Philip, can I play this video game and let's not worry about anniversary this year? I'm sorry."
I love you, but like also video game.
Yeah,
Video
maybe
games.
stuff like, like the day before, and then this will come out, and I
We'll
won't
get
see it for a
like
week.
we'll
maybe.
get like a cake, and we'll eat it, and then I'll eat it throughout the rest of the week as I play video games.
Like I said.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. Weirdly, nothing stands out. I remember being kind of sad over little things that were lost, like the map in Linsa that I loved so much. But at the same time, you could go into a dungeon, and if you got disconnected, then you could actually go back into it instead of being kicked out of it.
It was
So,
it was wild playing 2.0 for the first time. I got to go out to San Francisco for the ARR media tour. And it's like the idea of like, oh, I'm going to put like a hatchet on and I can use it in battle as a gatherer if I want to. I'm no longer restricted to like just throwing rocks, right? Of
Yeah.
course, not that, right? It's coming from 1.0 where it's like, you don't do everything now as these classes. But it's like, oh, you actually finally like, why wouldn't you use a hatchet in battle if you were in 1.0, just throwing rocks? But it was such a weird experience because there's that level of familiarity, but at the same time, like
yeah.
everything is new. It wasn't just like a fresh coat of paint. It was more than that.
You actually had to remake your character, kind of. Like, you got to keep all the data and everything, and they put your character with the equivalents, because all of the like template stuff got switched.
No more
they
butt
put
sliders.
your character in front of you with the equivalents of what you had, but maybe that wasn't actually what you wanted anymore. So you had to tweak your character before you put it in. And I actually remember remaking the character, just a brand new character, and picking out everything I wanted, because you were only get the one chance to change your character. And whenever you look at a character creator and then the character shows up in game, it's never exactly the same. So I was so picky. I think I made like 3 different versions of my character before I put the final finishing change touches on her and put her in game permanently.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild because it was one of those weird things where, I mean, you look at 1.0 and the amount of like polygons and stuff, right? We always joke about the flower pot. But also with 14, they were doing a lot of stuff where they would bring in elements from their Luminous engine. So you would get like the crazy lighting in the Shroud, where the light cuts through the leaves and you see the shadows on the ground. Like, getting something like that was nuts. But then it's also like, but it runs better. How? Like what?
Right.
Like the amount of engineering that had to have gone on with that engine behind the scenes is just, it's insane. And it was crazy just
Gear
getting
was prettier.
into that. Yeah,
We had such limited choices in 1.0, and they make fun of it in Endwalker. All of that crap,
Mhm.
weird shit that you wear on the moon. They're like, this is what we thought you guys wore. And in 1.0, that was what we wore.
Yeah.
It was awful. And then in 2.0, they were like, we realized that this stuff looks like crap. We don't want you to wear burlap sacks
Yeah.
anymore. Here, have some cute gear.
And they're like, would you
Yep.
like a dye system? Please. Like, as much as I love making red sleeves before I make the tunic, I would appreciate being able to do it after the fact if possible.
Yeah, it was I had stopped playing in 1.0, and I was very mad at 14 and the entire development team. I was so mad because it kept coming out that they didn't do a lot of market research, and they thought, yeah, we can make an MMO. And I'm like, being like just getting into the industry at the time, I was like, that is exactly what I don't want to hear, right? Like, I don't want to think of Square Enix as a place that does that.
Yeah.
So I begrudgingly tried 1.0. I did not want to. I was trying not to. I didn't even have my character anymore. I'm not a legacy player because I have a new account.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it and I was like, oh, thank God. They actually did it. I can't believe how bad it was. Like, holy crap.
I just did the math for how much money I've saved being a legacy player, and it's almost $1,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, for
It's a whole
having your sub
Now,
paid for
to
forever?
follow up with that, how much have you spent on merchandise since then?
Not
Sure.
as much as you.
It's because the legacy subscription is lower. That's why she saved a
it's a
lot.
lower rate.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not totally free, but it's a lower rate.
Yeah.
Which,
no.
I mean, honestly, is an incredible commitment
Oh, yeah.
that they made to
Mhm.
do that. I mean, of course, now the game population has exploded so much that,
Mhm.
like, that small portion of legacy players that gets that discount, I mean, it's not really
And it
probably
wasn't
affecting
even
them,
just
but-
the discount. I mean, they had this whole legacy campaign, right? It was
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, you get the discount, but also you'll get like the tattoo. You'll have the option to, like, the Gubu was the first non-chocobo mount in any FF MMO. And it's like, you can get this and it'll carry over into 2.0. You'll also get like a legacy chocobo. And it was a nice little like thank you package to players.
awesome.
And I think, Charles talking about 1.0 again, I think a lot of the issues that happened with that, right, a lot of the thinking behind it was, like, if you're making an MMO, right, you want to look at, first and foremost, what is the current gaming market looking like?
Yeah.
What are the current gaming trends? And for 1.0, what they looked at was Final Fantasy XI, which was based on EverQuest 1. So maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it. I mean, you hear all these stories about, especially more recently with 11 celebrating its 20th anniversary. They've been doing a lot of interviews with previous developers and stuff. And the idea that, like Sakaguchi was like, yeah, we're gonna make an MMO. Everybody get a sub to EverQuest. Everybody play EverQuest. Let's figure out what MMOs are all about. And then for 11 or for 14, they're like, oh, so like what MMOs have you been playing? 11. That's
But then you have Yoshida-san come in for 2.0, right? Who was looking at WoW, who talked about how, like, how much
And Dark Age of
WoW
Camelot.
Yes,
Yeah.
and like WoW set the precedent for so much evolution in MMOs. It pushed how we conceive MMOs. It appealed to a different demographic. It changed the way that people engaged with them. So you can absolutely see that shift, which I love. Now, you were all talking about the fact, like, what you were playing or things that you might have done back in 1.0. When you came into 2.0, what classes did you play? What did you start out as in the game? I told everybody earlier, but I started actually as a summoner when I first came in because I loved the summons in Final Fantasy. And while it wasn't right at 2.0 release, when I first started playing core game, I started out as one, and I did not like anything about it at all, and I immediately destroyed that character and then made a conjurer or white mage. And funnily enough, I am still playing white mage to this day, although there have been, as we get to the later portions of the game, there have been other classes I think are more fun or, offer something different, but White Mage just felt so iconic to me. I loved that it started in Gridania, so for me, I was really drawn to that, but I'm curious, what did you all start as, and are you still playing it today?
Well, we'll see, because we came from 1.0, right? I mean, I was just still a Dragoon. I didn't have to. I mean, one of the things, right? We had that kind of notification, towards the end of 1.0. It's like, all right, this is the cutoff date. So before that, I tried to get as many achievements as I could. I'd go poke a stick into little puddles to get the gigging achievements that we had for Fisher. I had a friend power level me in the mine, so everything was at 50. And so yeah, I mean, once 2.0 came out, I just kept doing what I was doing. Of course, the level cap hadn't gone up, but it was really interesting going through and experiencing similar hits of the story. Right when you start off, okay, here's the Amal Jah again, here's Ifrit, here's the Ixali, here's Garuda. I'll never forget going into Garuda after doing Ifrit, because Ifrit, the fights were the same, more or less, right? So you do Ifrit, and then you get into Garuda, and then you get the I would get the phase with like the two sisters or the twins or whatever in Garuda, and I'm like, oh wow, they added some stuff, and everyone's like, the hell are you talking about? This was in 1.0, and I'm like, oh right, I never saw this because I mana burned it with people. I would go in, we would have like just a group of black mages, and I would just give them MP refresh, and we would just burn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you go ahead. You go
Oh
ahead.
no, it'd be very quick. I started and I went, "Hey, you can raid in this game. What do you need?" And they went tank, and I went, "Okay, so I'll play the new tank. I'll play a warrior." And then
Wait.
somehow, yeah,
Warrior was new to 2.0?
yeah, wasn't it?
No.
Was it
No.
not?
So towards the end, after Yoshida took over 1.0, one of the first things he did was he's like, okay, we need to make this more, for lack of a better term, more Final Fantasy. So they added jobs. So you had Dragoon, White Mage, Warrior, Paladin. With 2.0, they introduced Arcanist, which then had Summoner and Scholar. So that was like the new job.
Warrior was vastly different, and people were like, "What the hell is this?" Right?
Gotcha.
Well,
It was like the big life
not
draining
recall.
tank.
a lot of it, I think, stemmed from the idea of again, because of course there's going to be comparisons. 11, right? So Warrior was kind of a tank in 11. When you think Warrior, just in general, you think DPS, like raw
exactly.
DPS.
That's true.
Of course, Ninja was also turned into a tank in 11, but that's another thing. And so when they came out with 2.0, and they're like, okay, we have these strict role systems, which right, say what we want to about it and what they should have maybe done instead. They had to get this game to a point where they said, okay, this is how this is gonna be, this is how this is gonna be, and they just needed to figure that out and just run with it and stick with it in order to meet this deadline of getting this thing out. And we still have it. But I mean, they had Paladin and Warrior. Those were the two tank options. In 2.0.
It was a new translation of it, so I was like, okay, I'll try that. I'll tank on Warrior. And then immediately, I think the raid group that I was going to be in for Bahamut was like, oh no, well, we got a tank. Don't worry about that. Like, then what do you need? Caster? So then I played Summoner, and I never changed, because I've basically been in that static or some variation of it since then. So I've always been the caster.
Static that I'm in now too.
Yep.
That's amazing. I love it.
I'll just be over here if anybody needs me.
Well,
Not
look,
being in
PJ,
the static.
it's not. You got to be on our data center before.
Well, if they would just hurry up and ignore a global pandemic to get data center travel working quicker.
That's awesome, though. So I actually had no idea that you started out as a tank. Interesting.
For a split second.
Short time.
Yeah.
Bard. And I was Bard up until Dancer came out, and then now I play a dancing Bard. I'm constantly told that I'm still a Bard, even though I don't play it, and would probably not do very well. I pick it up every now and then, like when we get through the raid tiers and we start to hunt mounts or whatever, I'll play Bard for a couple nights just to sort of refresh my memory. And then when I inevitably get to the point on that where I'm matching my dancer DPS in worse gear, I get sad.
I think Bard. I toggle a lot between Dragoon and Bard. It's funny. I'm like one of those assholes that's like, my handle is Raffledurg, but I don't always play Dragoon, nor do I necessarily main Dragoon. I'm one of those people. But I mean, because
I, on the other hand, changed my license plate when I changed my job.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You
I'm
not
actually
kidding.
do? Oh
Yep.
my gosh, Demetra, no, you do not have them in this room.
Yep.
Are you kidding me right now? This is not real.
no.
She keeps them?
Yep. Yep.
For our listening audience, Zen has just held up a license plate that she fished out from her room that said Zen Bard on it.
Mhm.
Wow, I'm not a real gamer.
The one
I-
on my
Wow.
car right now. Yeah, the one on my car right now says Zen Dance.
Yep.
Exian.
even know
what
I can just see the look on Philip's face every time they announce a new expansion and new jobs, and you go, "Ooh!" He's like, "Do we really have to pay this fee again to change the damn license plate?"
He doesn't
Well, that's
care.
the good.
Also,
thing
in
is
Virginia, it's
it's
really
super
cheap.
cheap.
It's
Oh,
like
well,
$15
then-
bucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's why
Yeah.
everyone in Virginia has fantasy licenses.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
very cheap.
I'm a little
You'll
jealous.
see them on Reddit all the time, like Final Fantasy 14 license plate.
Oh, I'm sure.
Most of them are Virginia. It's hilarious.
I actually joked when I switched the plates out that I should just turn these old ones into chakrams.
Mhm.
Gosh, you should. That'd be amazing. Oh, I love it. Okay, so that's everybody's class journey. Now, grant companies obviously played a pretty big role in the core game or 2.0. I know now maybe as many people don't feel that strong, deep allegiance now that we've gone so much further.
Grand companies were actually one of the things they added towards the end of 1.0.
Yes.
It was kind of one of the big staples. Like, right, again, we need to make it more Final Fantasy, right? So we got jobs, and we also got Sid. We didn't have a Sid yet. So they're like, this game needs a Sid. And so we got Sid, which tied into the Grand Company system a little bit with the cutscenes and stuff for
Did
that
Sid-
originally.
Did Sid's storyline tie over from 1.0 to 2.0? Like, when you meet him in 2.0 and he has amnesia, is that as a result of something that happened?
That's as a result of the
1.0?
Calamity.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just the calamity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
I was curious
knew
for a
Sid
second.
before, and then, the world kind of ended a little bit, and then we just find him later.
Okay. So,
I'm not sure he wasn't just faking it.
Yeah.
I mean,
could've
I
been.
would not put it past.
I'm just gonna
Uh,
jump in. Limsa, little freaking
Oh my
Minsa.
gosh. I didn't even ask the question yet.
1000%. Do it. Ask the question and I'll answer it again.
Zenidra, which
Yes.
grand company did you pick, and are you still a part of that grand
Limsa,
company?
little
Okay.
freaking Minsa. Yes, I am still a part of the Maelstrom. I will never not be part of the Maelstrom. I feel more strongly about the Maelstrom than I ever felt about things like School Spirit in high school. I love the Maelstrom till sea swallows
I
all,
mean-
motherfucker. If you're not in the Maelstrom, you're wrong. That's how I feel. And I picked the Maelstrom initially because
Pirates.
when they give you the cutscenes that like introduce you to each of the leaders of the cities, my beloved admiral caught an axe midair with her hand, and I said, I'm following you forever into the ocean till sea swallows all. Yes.
I don't like pirates, so I couldn't do Limsa.
See-
I started as an Arcanist, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna start in Ulda and then go get Arcanist. Or when I eventually got it.
For me, right, I picked Ul'dah, but I also had with the 1.0 collector's edition. You could send away for a rite of passage, which was basically your character name and birth date and all this stuff printed on stationery from your starting state. So I have my rite of passage for Ul'dah. Thus, I will always be Ul'dah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna be the only one representing Gridania here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Twin Adders, please and thank you. Now, look, Gridania has its problems. For sure. There's a lot of problems out there. It's a little
Yeah.
bad, a little bit
Yes.
isolated.
A little bad.
A little bad.
But at the same time, I'm sorry, I can never say no to like a mysterious forest setting.
Sure.
Plus, the buildings and that kind of like Art Deco-esque vibe and like, or I guess it's technically not Art Deco, but it has that like beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a different similar architectural that came out that featured kind of natural lines and the beautiful stained glass and all these other things. It's just like, it is so beautiful. And I love the weird elemental shenanigans. I love the like, I don't know, dangerous and or maybe sometimes hostile environment. I just think it's so cool. There's so many secrets in there. So for me, it was definitely and has always been Gridania. I tried to leave once so that I could get that really hot skirt that you get from Ul'dah, and it was not enough to keep me in Ul'dah. So I went
That's
straight back.
literally the only reason to join Ul'dah is that really hot skirt.
Thank you.
Otherwise, why?
We're talking about RP, right? And I know it's school spirit, but it makes sense to pick any of them. Honestly, like, yes, okay, there's the them says the best, which is not correct. But
I was wrong. The skirt and the very cute leader. I love the Sultana.
That's better.
True too.
It's one of those things that they should do more with, because the promise in 2.0 was a lot of stuff was going to be revolving around your grand company, and you would be able to summon primals and a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then it didn't happen. So to me, like right now, I'm surprised that there's even any school spirit at all, other than just internet arguments.
I never had school spirit. I mean, we would have like Spirit Day, like right, like our mascot was the tiger. So every Friday at the end of the day, they'd play Eye of the Tiger, and it's always like, oh God, here goes the song again. And it's just like, I could care less about school spirit. But what I think was a big driving factor for the enthusiasm and positivity around this game, especially at 2.0, was the attitude of Yoshida. I mean, it's right. You know, people joke about like, oh yeah, he was like this developer rock star, and yeah, I mean that's what it was. He came in right. Nobody knew who he was, and so you had a couple different crowds, right? You had the 1.0 players that said, please keep this game going somehow, and then you had the other people that are like, please make a good game, and he appeased both of those audiences and then exceeded those expectations. And so, I mean, and again, like we've talked about this, like, you know, over the years as well, Yoshida is not God. He is not perfect. No. He has made some really dumb mistakes, but his level of passion and understanding for the game and for the genre, I think, is what makes everybody like him. Right. Yeah.
It's because he plays MMOs. I mean, this cannot be understated. You cannot make a game if you don't understand the genre. You can't make a movie if you don't understand the genre. You can't write a book if you don't understand the genre. Games are art. Understand the genre so that you can follow some of it and subvert and put your own spin on it. You can't do it if you don't understand the source material.
Yeah, I mean, earlier interviews after Yoshida came out, they're like, so what kind of MMOs do you play? He's like, I've played Dark Age of Camelot. And it's like, that's a reach. Holy, like, this dude knows.
In
like,
his Ultima Online days,
yeah.
too. Yeah, I was like, what?
Yes.
I mean, even then, I mean, we had a little bit of Ultima representation on the 11 team with Sage Sunday, who was a GM for Ultima for years and years and years. Ended up basically becoming the developer face of 11 for a long time.
And it's these kind of like the grand companies and a lot of these other things that I think he introduced to the game, not only to make it more like Final Fantasy, like we were saying, but also to bring it more in line with like how people even rally online or like in games and spaces, right? People like having something to identify with. They like to champion something. I mean, Aldino, you said other than in dumb internet fights, and I was like, that's an MMO, baby.
That's what an MMO is.
Fight.
I mean,
PlayStation's better than Xbox.
It doesn't hit like Horde versus Alliance though, and it doesn't need to because they're not
Yeah.
openly at war.
Sure.
But to me, the Grand Company pride is like it's made up to me because they should do more with it. Is what I'm saying.
Yes,
Like,
I
Yeah.
agree.
there's
Oh,
nothing-
absolutely. It was a
That-
thing that they introduced to help drive
Yeah.
narrative in 1.0. And they ended up, I mean, even back in 1.0, like all the icons for all the different ranks that we, I think, when it was the last Grand Cup, like 4 point something, when they added a couple of like extra ranks or something, all of those rank icons were in the game for like
Yeah.
years before
Well,
that,
I
but
think-
they just don't do
plus-
anything
Yeah.
with them.
Plus now, I mean, I think all games will evolve beyond the constraints of your core game, right? So like the role that we play as a hero is so far beyond the Grand
Yeah.
Companies.
Oh, yeah.
And we
Exactly.
also now have the Grand Company of Eorzea. So the world itself has moved on. And I think that's even been something that has been a big detriment in World of Warcraft, actually, because balancing your narrative around two sides that are opposing in a fantasy genre in which having iconic and recognizable villains for people to stand up against is a really difficult thing, it turns
Yep.
out. And it ends up being this thing where, like, one side feels like they're getting favored more than the other. The Horde has a disproportionate amount of villains that are, like, foisted on it at all times. Like, it's just so it becomes a point where I think like you have to realize that designing around that isn't as big of
Yeah.
a thing. And we saw them try to even use it in stuff like PvP, right? Where those alliances were facing off against each other and you're trying to like win glory for your grand company. But really the story of 14 Beyond 2.0 grows to such a different scale. But when you are a new player coming into the game, it is one of the first major choices you have. And especially if you started out with one of the jobs like we were talking about, or, oh my gosh, Aldino, I love your dedication to just go, I don't
Yeah.
like that I have to start in Limsa, so I will instead hike my butt halfway across to go pick up, like,
Level 15. As soon as I could.
yes, it's like we don't really have a choice over where we start depending on what class you
Yeah.
might specifically want to play. So that is one of the first, I think, formative choices in the game. So 2.0, maybe beyond that, it hasn't necessarily carried on, but it is
Yeah.
always still fun to see.
It's
which one people
definitely
pick.
I
Yeah.
think among other pieces of content, I think Grand Companies are kind of one of those things that were grandfathered into the narrative, and then they're like,
Company fathered.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
they're like, okay, well now what are we gonna do with them? Because yeah, I mean, really, the only reason they exist right now is because players just starting out deal with them for some of the MSQ.
Yeah.
Like there's really
That's about
no
it.
reason for them to exist now, especially with the Grand Company of Eorzea. And it's you like look at stuff like guild tests,
They're here from 2.0 and they're due for a refresh and to allow people to pick, including Alamigo and Ishgard, like they wanted to at the very beginning of 2.0. Because if I could pick, Ishgard would have been the one.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it's
but, yeah.
it's a weird thing that's just kind of around, and it's like the summoner scholar split. Will it ever get to a point where they go back and revamp it to where it's not a thing anymore, or is it just it's kind of an old relic that's just kind of there, and it'll probably just always be there, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think
That's really
that kind of, I'll skip ahead just a little bit, but we can go back, because I think that transitions well into, is there any abandoned content from 2.0 that we would like to see them touch on again? Or just do away with entirely?
I think
Squadrons, goodbye.
for the love of the 12. Squadrons. Yeah.
Squadrons, yeah, I think Squadrons and Guild Test. So Squadrons, obviously, with
Yeah.
the new trust system now.
I love Guild
Well,
If they would use them.
Squadrons,
Just make more.
I'm getting to it. Squadrons was like early trust, right? You can get this group of NPCs and go into some dungeons and whatever. So I think they could either tie it into trust better, or just, I don't know. I think there needs to be a little more integration in there, or rebranding, or something, right?
Right.
And then with guild tests were essentially weird little novice network group duties. I don't know, like there was a loose story with it that would teach you kind of how to play the game, but I don't know that we necessarily need that anymore.
I don't know how many people, even in 2.0, finished all of them. Because, like, at some point, you're like, Like I could get
It,
experience.
did.
they were very
I
just
did.
I
kind
did
of
too, like-
they were just there, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
what do I get from doing this?
XP.
Not that much.
No, not much.
Yeah,
I think-
I would say I later learned that like it wasn't really worth to do. But the
Sure.
very first time that I went through Fresh, I realized that I
Yeah.
got an experience bonus from doing each of them for the first time.
Mhm.
So I did
Yeah.
every single one of them obsessively. But like I agree 100% with what's being said about the fact that I don't really know if the lessons they teach are even fully current anymore with how the game operates. I think we've even seen them remove some of the mechanics that they teach you in the guild tests from the revamps of later dungeons and stuff that happened. So to me, it's like, I don't really know if we need them unless they just wanted to tool them into just an actual side quest chain for people to do or something.
That would be cute. I think they
Mhm.
should combine them with the novice thing,
Yeah.
the novice hall stuff. I think that would be great. They like you're saying they might need to change some of them, but like the turtle one really stands out in my mind. Turtle
Yeah.
one reminds you that you need to read the prompts or you fail.
Yep.
If you just kill everything, you are not going to win the turtle one. You have to read what you're supposed to do, or you will get murdered. So I like that.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
the one where you have to kill everything at the same time. It teaches you sometimes you have to pay attention, kill everything at the same time.
I mean, I think we all love guild tests. They just don't. That's the thing. Like they didn't use them,
Could
and they
be.
could have been a hall of the intermediate. Like people have always said, there needs to be a hall of the intermediate, not just of the novice. Guild Test is the perfect
Give a
system
cute
for
little
that.
prize at the end. Give us some
Yeah.
kind of neato recolored gear or
Well,
something.
and I think
don't
there's
know.
something
It's
weird
cute.
about it too, where it's like a queuable duty. Like it just it's odd, right? It's just kind of one of those things. Maybe they had other plans for it, like free company primals, and it never came to fruition. But I think right, as with a lot of things in this game, we see things that are them testing the system for something that comes later. And whether or not these older systems stick around and are just forgotten and not touched anymore, or whether they kind of get polished and brought into the newer stuff, it's who's to say what they're going to do and if they care enough to do it.
The one that goes hand in hand with me for guild tests are the like combat leaves that you can take, where you have to like run to a location. I remember when I was first playing through 2.0, I was so confused about how these worked. I'd start one and then I was like, wait, hold on, what? Where am I supposed to go? And then you go there and then a thing pops up and you're on that timer or whatever, and I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? Like,
What's
how
happening?
many things do I have to complete in
Yeah.
whatever time? It was nice to have an activity to do on the maps, but it's funny to me that like crafter gatherer leaves are still something that seems to have like a throughput in the game, whereas those combat leaves,
They're pretty archaic and dead. In
yeah, they're pretty
1.0,
good.
leaves, combat leaves were the number one way to level. And you did like a weird thing where you like tricked it. You like did all of the stuff in the leave and then canceled it. You were like, I'm good, bye. And then
you'd
you
repeat
reset it and you did it again.
I mean, leave one of the first.
Because doing the leave over and over again gave you more XP
Yeah.
than like turning it in. And then you didn't have to like go to a place and try and get stuff to kill with other people a la 11. You just had this thing that fed you mobs to kill.
Yeah.
If you want to listen to a fantastic piece of history, go back and listen to Aetheryte Radio episode 1, where we talk about the issue of Famitsu that came out and talked about this revolutionary new quest system called Guild Leaves. We thought it was going to be like the best thing ever, because it wasn't even until
And it was
Yoshida
for a
came
while.
on where you had NPCs marked for quests. Like that wasn't a thing. It
wow.
was still that archaic 11 system of just talk to an NPC and it'll kind of go through the stuff. I mean, Guild Hest, that was like the, or Leave Quest, sorry, that was like the quest system for 1.0.
Yeah.
I see. Interesting. And Zen, you brought up squadrons, which
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so the thing is that when I unlocked squadrons, I genuinely wanted to love them. Like, I'll be honest, I actually think it's really fun. I like the concept of you have worked your way up the ranks, so that you yourself are a leader within this grand company. Now you oversee the other little babbies that come in and you send them on messages. And I like those kinds of little strategy mini games. I like it a la Fire Emblem, you know, where you've got like a team and you're training them and they're working together and you're helping them level up and educate themselves. And I actually think it's adorable. And I really like that there's random ones that can show up and they have their little blurbs and you can pick your team. But beyond that, it is the most confusing, obscure, bizarre, perplexing, infuriating
requirement to rank up.
Like,
that's what I don't like.
It just makes no sense.
Yeah, it's a system that some people really enjoy. I have a friend who loves squadrons, and for that friend, I would never want them to actually get rid of squadrons. When was the last time he actually messed with them? I do not know. But squadrons is not for me, and it was painful that it was a requirement for me to rank up to get a really snazzy jacket from the Maelstrom. That jacket is so good. But I'm also the person who the only trust I've ever done is the one in Elpis. I don't do trusts. I don't like trusts. I don't want to rank up the players, the scions. I don't care.
It takes forever, and the only reward is glamour to then take in to do more trust content.
I don't. It's just not my thing. But it is a thing for some people. If they keep it, they should probably expand on it in some way to make it more fun and make it not a requirement to rank up, because ew.
I feel like with them releasing the trusts for core game, to me, that felt like the final nail in the coffin for Squadrons, if I'm going to be honest. Because they were sort of, sometimes, occasionally, updating the dungeons that Squadrons could run.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have gone in and essentially made it so that all of those dungeons are runnable by those little trusts, and those trusts have nothing to do with Squadrons, was a little disappointing to me, to be honest. I was kind of hoping that they would just improve the AI. Like, you know, the Squadrons were still using the old kind of running AI as opposed to the trust, and then just let you kind of put in whichever of those characters that you had from something like Squadrons. Now, I'm sure that they probably couldn't do that because if people don't have it unlocked or whatever, but to combine those two systems and have just like generic people that are your trusts for the core game, but then if you eventually get to the point where you unlock and upgrade Squadrons, you can use those characters instead and customize a little bit more. To me, that would be a nice way to just tie that together and then like never have to develop Squadrons again if they don't want to. But it does feel to me that the choice to instead do like entirely other characters with entirely different AI and not do anything with Squadrons makes it feel like that will just be dead content, which is fine because as we've talked about, we moved beyond the grand companies. But it is just unfortunate because if you ever get to that point and you're trying to do that last mission or whatever, I think the Squadrons are just so deeply infuriating. And yet it could be something that would be a fun little culmination of the grand company.
Everything leading up to that is like, turn in seals, hit a certain level, turn in seals, and do a quest, come back, get your rank up. And then suddenly it's like, complicated system, figure it out, haha.
All I know is that all of my Squadron NPCs are dressed like not Mizzou.
I believe
and I rarely go to see them.
They're in there going, no.
It's so hot in this Namazu mask and this frog suit. Why would he make us wear these? Our commander's so weird.
Anyone had to think about it is to be able to get the loot boxes, right? The material containers, because you needed like one more level. And I'm sure everybody did what I did.
Well, they hadn't added, they didn't add a level for that. That was just a reward they added for whatever the current top level was. Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe
if you didn't do it,
okay, yeah, I see
that's when you were like, oh, I need to do it again. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The last time it was even a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I actually like that they put that reward in, because that does give you a little bit more incentive to max out Squadrons. This does also make me think of the Choco Companion, because I think this is another piece of content that might be made irrelevant with the expansion of trust capabilities. I think even in a semi-recent interview, Yoshida-san was saying, oh yeah, oh no, maybe it was actually Media Tour interview. I'm trying to remember. Or it was Media Tour.
We definitely had in our interview. He definitely gave the impression. Oh. There goes the license plates.
Cat nonsense. Oh, it's a license plate. But he had stated at that time, I think, that he was like, we really want to expand what trusts can do. Could you even take them out into the world? Who knows?
There
Or,
was
you
there
know,
was definitely the kind of the illusion that they're planning to do a lot more with trust, potentially open world. Because right now, I mean, that's the benefit of the Chocobo, right? It is an open world companion, and you also get some cool barding. But yeah, I mean, who knows what they have planned for open world stuff? And again, right, it's that idea of here's this thing that they had at one point, and now years later they've found a way to do whatever the end goal of it was, right? I have a Chocobo companion. It can like help me and support me in the open world. Okay, well now we have like trusts, which are like way better, right? It's just an evolution of getting to like that idea of
We
what
don't have those in the open world.
Well,
Well, no,
if we do,
Okay.
right?
It's
It's
being
that
led
idea
to,
of
you know what I
It's-
desperately want?
Mhm.
I want it so that if you like max level your Chocobo in one of the like tank healer DPS, they then unlock as a trust and you can
Yeah.
take them into dungeons. And
There-
everybody, like,
You know,
it's
the reason
They used to tell us we were going to be able to do that.
yeah, that was what led to them telling us about
That's why we're talking about it.
Squadron
Yeah,
NPCs.
in
I think
the
it was
same breath.
it was like a PAX East interview when I think we had talked about that. And he's like, oh yeah, we're thinking about like how you could like maybe go into like a dungeon with like some NPCs and stuff. And we're like, whoa, that's so cool. Remember when the Magitech armor was going to be a companion NPC too?
Yep.
That was a thing they talked
I do
about
remember that.
once.
Yeah, it's just that trust and companion should be the same, is
Yeah.
what we're saying, basically. Like,
And-
there shouldn't
and
be a separation.
Maybe it will be at
Maybe.
some point. Possibly,
Yeah.
maybe not.
But people still use their Chocobo companions, especially if like you're doing a fate alone or hunts. I actually used mine recently when I was doing hunts by myself on
Every time.
because you can't when you're little and they're like go to Ultima Thule. It's like okay.
Yeah.
Every
need
time a
your
new
Chocobo.
expansion drops, bring out
I
the
just don't-
Chocobo. It ain't gonna hurt anything. It's just gonna help you.
No.
Throw you
I
a
know,
couple
I
haven't leveled it
Choco
'cause I can't get a
regens. Or...
Thavnarian onion. So
oh
I'm just
no.
never going to do it.
You just need
I
to
already
learn
know
how
how
to
to do it.
garden. See, this is the type of gardening that I lost
you
out
have a
on
house.
when I had this non-existent chargeback on my
well.
account.
If you have a
Oh.
house, you can garden. If you
And
don't
I
have a house, you
wonder
can't.
That's true.
If Island Sanctuary is going to
Yeah.
make
Oh,
that
I
market
no
for
doubt,
Thavnarian onions,
no
like,
doubt.
Let's hope.
Because you
I
needed
don't
a
wanna grow
stable
them.
and you needed to. Yeah, I don't have any of that, so I'm like, screw it.
Yeah.
I don't interact with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do
think
have a
just
stable.
after seeing, and eventually we'll get to this point in the story too, but after seeing, like, we have our parallel, I guess you'd say, with Ardbert, like on the first, right? And the relationship that they do between him and, oh my gosh, why can't I remember his name right now?
Oh,
Saito.
Saito.
Seto.
Seto. Yeah.
I really want, because I do still use my Chocobo as well in fates and things like that, right? But I want more of that Final Fantasy throughput of, here's this little creature I got in the start of the game, and it's a silly big bird, and that's nonsense. But at the same time, if anybody's going to make me feel something for this bird, it's Final Fantasy.
6.35. They're just gonna start to characterize your Chocobo. They'll get a voice actor for the Chocobo.
I would be fine with that. I'm not going to lie. Be fine with it. I just think it'd be cute if he was in dungeons and he was like going Quay and then Alice was sassing him. I just think it'd be really adorable. So this is just me. But is there any other abandoned content we can think of from 2.0 or?
We did talk about oh my gosh, leaves. But what were they called? Temple leaves? Trash.
That's Heaven's
Oh
Word.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was Heaven's Word.
We're not there
My
yet.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm just saying, after the sass she was giving me earlier about trying to jump ahead, she's like, Temple Leaves in 2.0.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else.
I don't remember giving you sass for this.
You got some.
I wanted to talk about something, and you were like, no. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, that's right.
That was
I
a
didn't
thing.
think you were actually going to stop.
Anyway.
So then, what are things that they have changed since 2.0? This kind of dovetails into this, right? Like some of the ones that I had just thought of immediately were things like the multi-classing requirement. So this would technically, I guess, be abandoned content. But the idea that like you used to have to combine the two, you know, core classes, which I think did also come from 1.0. So like I want to be a paladin, so I have to do this or this, these classes to get those skills to then become a paladin.
Right.
Skill points kind of
Skill
goes hand in
points.
hand with
I
that.
remember resetting your skill points. That was a thing.
Mhm.
Summoner and Scholar loved that.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Gonna be honest, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I remember
Your
spending
attributes.
guild points
Yeah.
in 1.0 to unlock certain traits. You want to walk faster while in combat? Buy Fleet of Foot with Lancer tokens.
Oh, you remember the old materia? You could get like materia that would make you faster and stuff.
Really?
I don't know if they like physically
No,
made
it
you
wasn't.
faster. I think
they
they
didn't
made
have
you like
speed, but they had a lot of different more like
there was a
nitpicky
chocobo
stat.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was useless. I'm gonna look it up.
I mean, it very well could have been.
Yeah, I am glad that we don't have skill points anymore, I think, because in other MMOs that I play that still have it, it does feel like there will be some kind of meta precedent. I mean, this
Correct.
is the thing in all MMOs
There will always be a
forever.
meta, and if you don't follow
Yes.
the meta, you are wrong and therefore a bad player. Therefore,
feels like
everyone follows
another-
the meta.
Yeah, it feels like another opportunity to just be underpowered because you tried to do something yourself and listen to your heart, but really the whole community would be like, oh my gosh, why didn't you dump all your stat points?
I have
into X,
5
Y,
more
and Z?"
HP, but I deal 0.02 less damage. Look at me go.
I do find it kind of fun in stuff like ESO now, where they have this kind of champion point system, which is it's an account wide thing. So like when you make a new character, even if that character is a little baby level 1, if you have champion points, which are like 50 plus levels on other characters, they essentially stop giving you levels and instead they give you these champion points, which is kind of like a horizontal progression system. So you make a new character, that character automatically has however many cumulative champion points that you've earned, and then like you can kind of spec those into unique skills for that character. So like I want this character to be really good at stealing stuff. I want this character to do damage over time. I want this character to do this or this or this, and to sort of supplement out how they do that, which I like in theory, but as I think we've seen with stuff like 14, the amount of stuff you actually needed skill points for, the amount of unique custom builds you could do,
adding
it's like, it's not
unnecessary
there.
complexity. I mean, it's like 1.0
Yeah.
when you had, you know, your Draken Greaves would add plus something to jump. Like they had action modifiers, which is cool. But like at the end of the day, like the way with builds and stuff, like that's just don't do that. It's gonna make things so much more tricky. And so yeah,
The materia was heavy resistance. So
That-
it wasn't
okay.
go faster, it was not go slower.
yeah. It's so many weird materials. Yeah, I mean, we also had the different difficulties for fights, right? We had like normal Titan, normal Ifrit, normal Garuda, right? And I think that was probably more so, and I think it's fine that they're still there to help players ease into that grouped, slightly higher difficulty content. We had, I mean,
Oh, hold on. Can I play devil's advocate for that really fast?
Sure.
I actually think it's bad to have the 3 different tiers. The reason being that I think mechanically it does teach you in more incremental steps how to break down mechanics and get from point A, which is normal, to point B, which is savage, right? So in that sense, I think it's good. But I actually think that when you look at it in the scheme of how the rest of the game is played, it sets up a weird precedent for new players where, and this happened to me when I first started playing, right? Like End of Heavensward, where I went through, I got all the quests unlock, Oriange gives me more, I get to Extreme, I queue into Extreme, I cannot get a party, it will not go, I'm confused, I did it
I
for
see what you
normal,
mean.
I did it
Yeah.
for hard, what's the difference? Extreme's just whatever the next one is, right? And then you get people who get in there and bail because they get it in Mentor Roulette or stuff like that. I
Sure.
always try to stay and just teach the fight, and many of those fights aren't even that hard through like the duty finder anymore. But I do think that because it is not the format that is used anymore, it sets up this weird precedent for new players where they don't understand maybe where some of the lines for like endgame content and just content I am doing in my quest log lie. And
Right.
so like people get frustrated, people get disheartened, people want to do the fight, they don't understand why people don't do the fight. And it is kind of also a problem of our community that at this point extreme fights really you are just expected to go to party finder, right? So it is a problem on both sides, but the fact that it's set up in that way, I think ends up being a problem for some new players where they don't really understand moving forward, like what it means, the separation between endgame content and other stuff. And while you can absolutely do those primals, I don't know how they could, make that clearer to play. I don't know how
That's
they
fair.
could.
Yeah.
And I feel like having that hard step in the middle exacerbates the problem in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely there because the extremes weren't there to begin with. And I could
That's
I
true.
could see them maybe going back and just cutting the middleman out entirely. But
Yeah.
that it was the first expansion of
There was
this,
a lot
and
of kind of
there was
feeling
no
around
extreme
for
at the time.
difficulty stuff. I mean, you look
Yeah.
at Binding Coil. Tier 2 of Coil has a savage difficulty. Not tier
it.
1, not tier 3, just tier 2.
Yeah, what was happening? I mean, this is on our list, right? So this is what caused in 2.0 and Binding Coil, from what I understand, is what caused them to start designing these kinds of raids, the 8-man raids, with both the normal and savage distinctive difficulties, because so many people were really unhappy that they couldn't do the Binding Coils.
Yep.
And from what I understand, and I think Zen, Aldi, you were raiding in this, right? Like, it was incredibly hard.
It was
Mhm.
I mean it was
Some
no
of
harder
them, the
than
later ones.
Yeah.
what we have now, but
Yeah.
the story was amazing, and I absolutely like heart goes out to the people at the time who were like, I would like to know what the hell is going on, and I can't because I don't have a group, or I don't want to do
Yeah.
this difficult content.
It
It
does
was a
suck,
great story.
but it's one of those to me, and this is from my point of view as a player who likes to be good at it and has the ability to do so, right? Like the lack of anxiety about playing with other people, the physical, actually being able to do it physically. To me, that was the best raid I've ever done in any MMO because it had the story and it was difficult. I loved the marriage of that, which is why Binding Coil is my favorite, and like my favorite moment of the entire game. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Because of that marrying of that difficulty, the kind of social aspect of it, and the story. And I get why they don't do it and why there is a normal mode. But I don't know. Like, that's just where I am about that, you know? It's difficult to have the content where everyone can play it, but then there's that second layer. You think about Mythic and WoW, which is like, my goodness, and looking for raid, they had to add another one. They have completely more. It's a hard problem to fix, and I don't think 14 has fixed it yet. I mean, normal mode is great, but it's also super boring. I don't know.
I actually really liked this latest tier for the last fight in normal mode, because it wasn't immediately clear what the hell you had to do.
Yeah.
Which sucked if you weren't with, people who knew what you were supposed to do, or people who would like take advice or talk about what's going on. But just like going in there first thing in the morning with friends and being like, we just died 3 times because we don't know what's going on, was just like kind of invigorating, to be honest. Once we figured it out, it's like, oh, that's not hard at all. But initially it's like, whoa, this murdered us 3 times just in cold blood. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're gonna have to step it up.
Yeah. I mean, they've obviously changed a lot of stuff from then, I mean, and one of the things that even I really enjoyed about Binding Coils, as somebody who came into it later, and I didn't do it synced or anything like that, but I did like that I think we're experimenting a little bit more with the diversity of each of the coils. Now,
Right.
of course, that could sometimes mean that you had one that was just like all garbage, it was like all trash. Like then you have another one. But the fact that it did feel more like it was this kind of journey that you were fighting your way through, you were moving through, you had these like passages, you had these
turn
different distinctive
3
maps,
Mhm.
like I liked that a lot, and I know why they moved away from it, but I do kind of miss from 2.0 that I think attempt that they were making to be kind of like a like an actual wing of a raid in another MMO versus just like boss. I thought that was something that was kind of fun and worthwhile. And then obviously we've had things reworked as well with old content like the MSQ dungeon, some of the old dungeons that were coming off of even what you were all talking about with 1.0 with that sort of semi-open world design and other stuff that was happening. So that's definitely changed since 2.1, some of it really recently. But yeah, 2.0 I just had a lot of stuff that we would build off of, but it is interesting thinking back all the way to then and how new players experience it differently now.
Yeah, I mean, we got our first new job in Ninja in that patch series, and we showed the dev team how to play it technically because they didn't think it was going to do that much damage, and then people found out the optimal rotation, and they went, "Oh crap, we need to fix this." So that was an interesting time too.
Yeah. But that's going to do it for us today. We have a lot more to talk about. We still have more to talk about with 2.0. But we are going to go ahead. We're at probably just a little bit over 2.5 hours here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We will resume this talk in a few weeks when we have everybody back. We got some birthdays happening for a couple of us between now and then, so we won't all be here. But until then, if you want, you can find me on the internet, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube as Raffledurg. Zen, where can they find you?
Hello, Michelle /Zanidra, and you can find me on Twitter at Zanidra_A, and also on Twitch at Strawberry Bob sometimes, but mostly on plus the word when the number shout the word. It's a D&D podcast that I do with some very dear friends, and we're gonna do a show tonight. It is a D&D Diablo show, and they talk like this the whole time and say weird, dumb, stupid things. And also that goes to YouTube. That's me on the internet. Yay!
That's pretty cool. So, like, I'll know where can they find you?
Yeah.
Here and only here. And also, plus the word, one, the number, shot the word. Where I do not play in the D and Diablo game, because then I would have a weekend full of D&D, which, yeah, I sometimes like, but not all the time. I'm still working on the OnlyFans. I am actually still working on that.
Okay.
It's true. I'm not lying.
Okay.
Your face is just like not giving anything away. I'm not sure.
No.
Okay.
Cool.
You'll never know until I put the link in the chat when we're talking about it. Well, actually, I don't think I can. I don't think I'm allowed to, which is a good idea.
Change it.
Okay.
It's just going to
Change
show
your
up
fate.
randomly.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
And last but not least, Rook, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv Rookery, spelled Rookuri, Rookery. You can also find me on YouTube at Rookery and on Twitter Rookery, but with an underscore after it until I'm able to pry the suspended account at Rookery out of Twitter's cold dead hands. So,
Good luck.
Yes. Thank you. I'll need it.
All right. And if you want to contact us here, just in general, at the show, you can email us at aetheryte@gamerscape.com. You can tweet at us at aetheryte. And of course, you can find us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Discord at GamerEscape. Discord.gg/GamerEscape. We have an Aetheryte Radio channel on there. You can talk to us about the podcast. We have a Final Fantasy XIV channel where you can talk to us about... That's right, Final Fantasy XIV. You guessed it. You guys are smart.
Who knew?
And that is going to do it for us this week, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. Have a great rest of your weekend. And we'll see you back here next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.